all of us are our own healers. And so the truth is, if we go looking for other people to heal us, I'll tell you right now, I'm not a healer. There's no way in hell I'm a healer, because there's tons of times I'll tell people, like, you just got to remove the things that are holding you back, and you develop new habits that actually serve you. And when that happens, it might be in different forms, because there's different ways to get healthy.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on the show we explore the survivor's journey, practitioners making a difference, and the therapeutic treatments and transformational technology that allow the body to heal itself. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I am here in Austin, Texas at MSW Lounge. We're going to jump into the world of upgrading your health with some nutraceuticals, some IV therapy, some next level vitamin exposure, and you guys, this is the first time I've ever had two people on at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and pass it around. We'll go left to right and just let everybody introduce themselves.
Wonderful. My name is Jonathan, otherwise known as Nurse Doza, and I am the nurse practitioner, chiropractor here, duo part of the team of me and Baldo.
Yeah. And I'm Baldomero Garza, Baldo, Tex-Mex Yogi. I go by a lot of names. DJ Balldog, right?
Yeah. International DJ.
And John and I have been best friends since college, and we've always planned to work together. And we used to want to own a bar with music for people to go listen to. We used to love, did you ever watch Storytellers?
Yeah.
Like we used to, I was like, well, I want to have that one. Like people can just go drink and then watch two musicians go at it. Yeah. But we stopped drinking. So, so then we created a vitamin version of a bar. And
that's what that is.
That's a good jumping in point. I'm 4 months into Austin.
Okay.
And Austin is incredible. You know, obviously, like I scoured the US. I'm like, where am I going to move to go live and have this little incubator where I'm going to generate health and wellness and content? And of all the incredible attributes, one thing that I noticed with the food and the music was always tied in was the alcohol culture or drinking. Yeah. And I'll have a tequila once in a blue moon, but generally I don't like the way I feel after I drink anymore. Yeah. You know, I like the way I feel after I do nutraceuticals or amp coil or methylene blue or NAD. Yeah. And that's, you know, I'm the 0.0001%. So let's talk about that a little bit. You guys wanting to create something where there was community and atmosphere, but also health. Why that switch?
We decided that for health and wellness, it had to be almost an educational platform, because what we were trying to do was so far from the norm that you were going to have to explain it over and over again. And for the people who it resonated with, they got it on the first try. So from that standpoint, we had to create a community first. And by that, it was actually designed by detail. Like we looked at every single aspect of what the business had to look like in order to cater to the public, because we envisioned ourselves as clientele attending this bar. So if we wanted to attend it and it wanted to be cool, like what would we want to go and see? And so that's essentially what we started off with. And so those are kind of the initial ideas. And we're like, okay, well, we can definitely make vitamins fun. And that's how we looked at it. So we said, okay, well, most people go to a bar because they're thinking they want to have fun, right? And it's like, well, healthy people feel better. So naturally they're going to be more upbeat. So we decided to like include like house music in the lounge. So
I mean, you can hear it even before you start walking up sometimes.
It's the ambience, right? Like of creating that atmosphere where it's welcoming. Maybe it's already high vibration, like, you know, high vibe, they say, right? Mm-hmm. And so that naturally resonates with people who want to be in that type of environment. And I think it's kind of interesting because you don't have to separate people, because naturally people are going to tend to this type of lifestyle. So for example, when we started the IV stuff, we were kind of like one of the first people to do it, right? And then it started catching on. It was only like in Vegas. It was only in like, you know, places like that. And people thought it was hangovers.
Yeah.
And so we said, no, we're not hangovers at all. We're not hangover IVs. We're not a hangover bar. Like the place that opened in town across from us basically was a hangover place. And we said, you can go over there. And so we never looked at it as a competition, because we said ours is health and wellness IVs. And so it's a different approach, because that's why you're sitting here, essentially, right? Because you want to come over to a hangover bar.
Exactly.
Right. And so we made sure from the beginning that was part of the culture. Because imagine the educational piece is, why would I do a vitamin IV? Even to this day, still people are like, why would I do a vitamin IV? And I would say, well, because it's the best way to put vitamins in your body. Like there's not even a question, right? So then it's like, well, think about the effects it can have on people. And so here's the other part of it. Educating each other on owning a business and running a business never been done before was really cool.
Yeah.
And Baldo was the sales marketing genius that he is, that came in and said, all right, well, teach me why vitamins are so great for people.
Yeah.
And so I did. We taught each other. And so he taught me sales marketing. I said, this is why vitamins are great. Then he says, well, that's what we tell people. This is what we educate them on, why they should be taking these all the time. And I said, well, you sure? Like these? No, you got to tell people like exactly to the point, like without any BS, this is what this is. Lead with your passion, lead with what you're really trying to provide, your service, and then everything else will follow. And that's how it works.
Yeah, and for me, it's always been from a sales standpoint and you quote this all the time, is a like me, know me, trust me, pay me, right? Like it's like people have to get to like you a little bit. So that's why like the house music's like, oh yeah, cool. Because then they're going to want to get to know you. Once they want to get to know you, then that's when the trust comes. And then once they trust you, they'll buy anything, right?
Yeah.
But you also can't ever go bad on that trust, right? Like, and so that's important. So it's always like, well, we just got to be straightforward with it. And then the fun part is like, we come up with fun names, right? It's like, I mean, because coming into the health world, I've never been in the health world before. It's just so rigid. There's so much money being made. So nobody does it differently because it works that way. And that makes you a lot of money. So why would you change it? Yep. And so we never started with that. We were like, no, we're just going to do it differently. Because like we want to play a whole different game. Even like if you think about like, I always reference like the vitamin D, like we have a vitamin D and we call it the D. And I was like, how come everybody calls it just vitamin D? No one calls it like a fun name or like something. It's like, well, what would be a fun name for a vitamin D? It's like the D, you know? And so
it's working.
And it works, right? And it's like everybody needs the D. And that's a very factual statement, but it's also very funny.
Yes.
But everybody does need vitamin D.
But it puts that kind of charisma into the environment. And I think what happens is people are wanting an upbeat type of mentality. So for example, one of the other things that we talked about here, when I told about medical like clinics, I said it's a very bland approach. It's not like fun. It's everything you imagine going to your doctor's office growing up was you sat there in a very bland room with like that blue color on everything, right? And the carpet was really, it was 70s carpet, and there was the popcorn tile on the top. And
there's a box of toys.
There's a box of toys.
All the six kids
kids
have
the
touched.
magazines are there and all that. So like, I was like, I don't want anything like that at all. I don't want any type of setup like that. We have to make it fun towards like we would hang out at. Right. And so we slowly started creating that environment, and it kind of took off because I don't know, we live in this every day. And so other people don't. It's like Cheers sometimes. It literally is. You don't know who's going to show up.
Yeah.
And we like that because when we first started off, this was the other thing. We bootstrapped everything. We bootstrapped everything from day one. We still bootstrap it to this day because banks never like small businesses, right? So no one ever gave us money for anything starting off. So we just made it on our own.
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast about the banking system and how that is intended to really extend the distance between the 1% and the lower class. It's really incredible. I mean, I want to go back to, you said it a couple times. You're like, why vitamin IVs? Yeah. Why IV nutrition? Like, why can't I just get my nutrition from my food, my nutritional profile? I'd love to go into that a little bit and really understand for the audience.
Yeah.
And I'll just you can take over here in a second, but it's funny because when we first started talking about it was because I used to sell Cutco. I did events.
Yes. Do you know how many badass baller entrepreneurs have sold Cutco?
Yes. Yeah, and they're like,
that's the program. That's the thing. That's the setup, right?
And so you get that from that, right? And so, because you learn customer service very well in a very unique way and in a very like proactive approach.
What was the price point of Cutco?
I mean, well, it depends, but the average order, like company wide, is like 300, I think. And then some of us had like $1,200 average orders.
I remember that seeming like so much money. I'm like, oh my God, $1,000 knife set. And so when you could do that, when you could be successful in selling that, you felt like you were selling $1 million deals.
Oh, yeah.
Like from Rochester, New York, which is very rural. Yeah. It was like, what?
Yeah. Well, the first thing was always like learning the idea that like just because you can't afford it doesn't mean anyone else can. right? And so like the best thing you can do is just ask, because they can always just tell you no, right? And then and then you just become comfortable with getting the no's, and then after that, anything's possible.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is that one of our friends or someone in the company was starting a nutritional company, like a vitamin supplement company, and I bought into it, and I brought it, and I was like, hey, can you check and to see if this stuff is good? Because I knew he knew about all this stuff. So he's a biochemistry genius, like he just gets it. And then that's what we're going to get into here in a second. But he started explaining to me all this other stuff. He's like, why don't we just do this for ourselves? I was like, well, let's do it. and then that's how we got started with
So I said,
vitamins.
Well, I said, if you really want to do this, I said, we can actually do it through IVs. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, you know how you would go to hospital and you get like the hydration bag, and then they put medications in there if you're sick, like you'll put antibiotics in there. And I said, so like instead of putting antibiotics or medications in there or just having the saline, you can put vitamins in there. And he's like, really? I said, yeah, the same vitamins that you take in your supplements every day, you know, your powders and your pills and all that, you can take through an IV form. At the time, all the research I had looked at, I had actually trained under a couple of doctors who showed me how to do this. And they've been doing it for years. Like IV vitamin therapy has been done for like 40, 50, 60 years at least. It's been done a long time. And it's incredible because what it's been applied to has been towards really incredible health issues. And what's interesting is that I said, well, Baldo, we can put this in an IV. Like, let's say we put glutathione in an IV instead of taking it as an oral form, which is hard to digest and absorb in the body. The IV goes straight into the bloodstream, which means you're looking at almost 100% absorption of your vitamins, which means if you're looking at an oral supplement, I mean, you could maybe get 30, 40, 50% if you're lucky. And sometimes you have to take more to get more absorption. And then there's people's digestive tracts and so forth, right? So I'm like, why don't you just bypass the digestive tract and take your vitamins straight into your bloodstream, and it'll go to wherever your body will needs to take it. That's why vitamin IVs are the best, because I mean, it is the best way to put vitamins into your body, bar none. And there's no debate about that at all. And
then the next one would be what, sublinguals?
The next one would, you could make the case as subcutaneous, then you would make the case as intramuscular, and then you could make the case, and this is descending order of absorption. And then I guess maybe like you could do either, I would say intranasal and then sublingual, and then I would say like possibly topical, then oral, and then like, well, above all that, I would put IV, then suppository.
Oh, that's right.
And then I'd put subcutaneous, and then I would put intramuscular, like literally, because we know about coffee enemas, suppositories. Like I'm sure you've heard about NAD suppositories by now, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So what's interesting is you're just trying to get that into your system. And so what we really look at is this: why are we getting vitamins into our body? We need nutrients. Okay. So this is the biochemistry part, which I told him was fascinating. I find biochemistry fascinating because it's how we function, right? It's essentially the science behind how the human anatomy functions, right? Like how your liver functions, how your brain thinks and operates, how your heart operates, how your blood circulates. Like, it is incredible. I've dedicated my life at a younger age to understanding the human body because I just find it the most fascinating machine ever created. And we're given one. Like, you're just for some reason, right?
Yeah.
So
for some reason,
we're all given this. And so then I say, okay, well, we need nutrients in order for this function, this car, this body to work better. And so vitamins are those nutrients that help the body function better. And without vitamins, you just don't function better. That's a period. That's a statement. That's science.
Yeah.
And that's vitamins, including all the things below it,
every
like
single
amino acids,
like supplements, just supplements
in general,
supplements as a whole, and the reason,
molecules.
Well, the reason you have to supplement is because you don't get it from your food anymore. And really, if you could get all your nutrients from your food, that'd be great. But if people are still thinking they can, the only diet that comes close is carnivore diet, because they actually eat the liver.
Yeah.
I had a Wade Lightheart on from the company Bioptimizers, and you know, we talked a little bit about that, like the value of a peach 50 years ago,
right?
Is you'd almost need 50 to 60 peaches to get the same nutrients into your body. It's really, you couldn't pile enough food onto the plate to not live in the state of mild nutrient deficiency.
Yep.
I mean, that's setting aside water quality and minerals and remineralization. I mean, that's a whole nother story, how deficient the minerals are in our food and our water supply. So it was really interesting making the case for, you know, this is no longer something for a biohacker or a marathon person who is committing to marathons or an Ironman. You know, this is, everybody needs to look at this. What is your body taking in? Because, you know, in my experience, it's not what you're eating, it's what you're absorbing.
Correct.
What you're digesting. So I'd love to hear about, some of the things that you found to be true, because listen, I could look up IV Lounge in Austin, or I could look up nutraceutical IVs, and I can look up a lot of places.
Yep.
And I know I have a different experience, how I walk out of there, how my body feels, how my energy is. It really depends on what someone's formulating.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the formulations you guys are doing.
So we understand the vitamins that we give to everyone to the 10th degree. We researched it, me personally, at least 12 years. Baldo's now approaching probably six or seven.
I do want to mention the one thing that, as a business aspect, that we wanted to keep unique, that was also difficult to do so, was the idea of customizing our vitamins, right?
Yeah.
Because you can show up to, like you just said, you can look them up, and now, today, there's tons of places that offer IVs.
Right. Yeah.
And they have a menu, and then you pick one, and you show up, and they administer it, and you feel great or you don't. And that's all there is to it. That's the easiest thing to set up from a business medical standpoint. It's not very easy to set it up where, like, hey, by the way, let's add some of this and let some of that. But there's a lot of background in order for us to even be able to do that. That took a while to get that set up. And so that's the difference. It's like, well, how do you feel? How do you want to feel? And then from us, we look at that like, oh, well, that sounds like you have a glutamine deficiency, and you probably also have a B6 and a B5 deficiency. So let's add some more of that to your IV. Mm-hmm. And then people experience it like, man, I've never felt better. I slept better. I pooped now. Like, and so there's all this, and we're looking for those terms, right?
Yep.
We don't want to just hear like, yeah, I felt great. That sounds great. But we want to hear like, well, did you poop more? Did you sleep more? Did you did you go and run faster? Did you, all that? And that's what we're looking for. And that's what we want to hear. But it wasn't easy to set up that way. And because people ask us all the time, like, how can I get this back home? Who do you know that can do that? And I can go and search up San Francisco IVs, a bunch of them come up. You start calling them. It's like, no, this is our menu and this is what we offer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so someone asked me the other day, they said, okay, how do I find one out here where I'm at? And I said, well, the first thing I would ask them is for certain ingredients to see if they carry it. So, for example, like everyone probably carries glutathione at this point. They carry NAD. I'm sure they have B12 and the fat burners. That's majority of the basic IV clinics that are out there. The thing is how you separate the difference between them is like, say, do they have NAC, like NAC? Mm-hmm. Do they carry lysine, right? Do they carry alpha lipoic acid? Those things are important because we utilize those for very specific health issues. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, NAC, we're going to talk about it today at the Lunch You Learn, is by far one of our most profound and effective therapies that we can give to people. And when you give someone...
That's why they try to take it away from us.
And so when you give N-Acetyl Cysteine through an IV, the research that I studied years ago was given for like cancer patients.
Yeah.
And what's incredible is that it should be given to cancer patients alongside of them when they're getting the chemotherapy and the radiation, because NAC helps their immune system. Mm-hmm. And it's also a mucus thinner. And so if you imagine someone's coming in and they have allergies and they've been eating poorly, the liver is probably in bad shape. NAC is the biggest liver detoxer you can find. And so if you give that to someone, they will detox maybe during the IV even.
Mention the story about the lady with the respiratory.
Oh, yeah. So get this. So you want to talk about the profound difference between
our N=1 experiment. Let's get some of these.
So these are the things we've seen, and these have been written down.
And for us, it's like, of course.
Yeah, of course. Well, these are actual stories. These are actual stories from people that we've seen and we have addressed. And I love telling these because they're actual. It's relatable. So this one lady came in and she wanted to lose weight. Most people either want to lose weight, they want to feel better, or they want a better mood. They don't talk about sleep. They never say sleep's an issue until you have to ask them about it, which is incredible. Usually I come in thinking like, well, my sleep's horrible. Something's wrong. But she came in wanting to lose weight. So I said, okay, well, do you have any other health issues? Blah, blah, blah. When she started talking about this thing in her lungs, and it's like cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a mucus buildup in your lungs. Mm-hmm. You find out about it as a genetic issue very on in your life. And it's very detrimental. Like some people don't live very long because of it. So she had a derivative of this. And her doctor who was treating this was a pulmonologist and said, we're going to try you on this experimental drug. And she was on this drug for 5 years, and it was a chemo drug. And she said, I don't really want to be on this drug. And like I said, this is how usually conversations diverted after a while. And all of a sudden, it was like, okay, well, tell me more. Like, why? What do you feel at this? She says, I don't like it. I don't know. It doesn't make me feel good. But yet the doctor says we're trying it because whatever's going on in her lungs, they're trying to shrink it. They're trying to get rid of it or something. I don't know. I don't even know why. She said she couldn't even explain to me why she was taking it. Sure. I'm trying to guess. And I'm thinking like, this is really messed up because like, I wouldn't want my mom to be on a chemo drug for no reason. I wouldn't want to be on a chemo drug for no reason unless you could tell me this is really going to help you. And even then, I think something like chemotherapy is like a third effective to begin with. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, if you really crunch the numbers and look at survival rates across all platforms, it's shockingly low.
It is.
Way lower than you
expected.
I usually have that on hand,
right.
But it's shockingly low only because I know now they're doing experiments with using electric fields to stop the division of cancer cells, and that has been extremely successful.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But they'll shut that down once it starts to work.
Well, that's the problem, right?
Or they'll monetize it on a platform that you have to pay $30,000 a month to have the system, which they're doing, which we can get into.
Yeah, so that's essentially what I looked at was, if you're doing this experimental drug, how effective is it? So I said, well, let's try something. I said, I have an idea. Cystic fibrosis is a mucus issue, right? She goes, yeah. I said, well, we have this thing here called NAC, and I know it's known to be a mucus thinner. In fact, in the WHO essential medication book list, NAC is classified for reducing mucus. That's what it's there for. And so I said, well, let's give you some and see if this does anything for you. So for about 2 months straight, she'd come in every week and we'd give her a full syringe of intramuscular NAC into her gluteal region. And she said 4 hours after every injection, she was hawking up like white mucus from her just hawking it up. And I said, what do you think that was? She goes, I think it was like the deepest part of my lungs coughing up things. And I said, that's fascinating. Let's keep doing this.
Yeah.
So fast forward, 6 months go by. She goes back to the doctor at this point. And she goes, I'm going to my doctor, the one who put me on the chemo drug, and I'm going to tell him I think I should get off this. Because that was the goal all along. I said, well, yes, I think we can do that, but we have to show cause, right? Like show why. So the measurement with this doctor is he takes x-rays, right? To see if there's a mass in her lungs. And before, the weird thing about it was she had masses all over her lungs. Okay, but they weren't tumors. They were just masses, right? Like congestion of basically mucus, which could be pneumonia later and all that. And then it just clogs it, whatever, right? So the weird thing was they moved a lot. So the doctor was like, this is weird. I'm not going to do anything yet. We're going to watch this. So every time she come in, they do an x-ray. Well, they go in, x-ray, nothing shows up at all. No mass, nothing at all. It's clean. And the husband is now with the wife there because he comes in. We know the husband very well too. The doctor looks at her and says, what have you been doing? What have you been doing lately? And she's kind of smiles. She's like, what do you mean? Well, your x-ray looks perfect. There's no masses. It's clear. What have you been doing over the past year? I don't understand. I've been doing everything you've told me to do.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, there's something different. You're doing, and he kind of looks at her lab work, and your blood work count is great. And it looks better than it was before. What are you doing? And she still says nothing. She just laughs. Oh, I've been changing my diet and I've been losing weight. And it's because that has been true. That's what we've been doing. The doctor finally says, no, tell me what you've been doing. We've never seen this before. In 5 years, we've never seen this. She goes, I've been taking intramuscular NAC injections and I've been doing oral NAC at home as well for the past 8 months. The doctor goes, huh, because it's a mucus thinner, right? And she goes, yeah. Huh, the doctor says. And the doctor says, well, I have a colleague in Chicago who's a pulmonologist, really renowned, and he does a lot of research on NAC. And he talks about this all the time, how it's beneficial for mucus thinning. Well, I'll be. And that's all he says. And so she says, can I get off my chemo med? And the doctor says, yeah, of course. I don't see a reason why you need to be on it. The husband is fuming, fuming. He's literally cussing my name under his breath. Why? Not because he's mad at me, because the entire time we've been telling him this was going to happen, it happened. He goes in there and he was about to rip into the doctor, be like, F you, doctor, how dare you put my wife on this? And you don't know what you're doing. If you knew this all along, why didn't you say anything?
Why didn't you say anything?
Why didn't you try it? Right?
Why didn't you try it?
Well, it's just those things about the trying things with vitamins. There's not a lot of risk,
right?
Like maybe the source that it comes from, there might be an allergy from where it comes from, but there's really never a risk. So it's like, even if you are doing the chemo drug, why don't you at least also try these things? Because there's not going to be any damage there for the most part.
It's not the same side effects as chemo. Let me just tell you that right now.
Oh, I mean, listen, from someone who went through as much chemo as you could do, I can tell you on the other side, my greatest recovery was recovering from my cancer treatments. Not the cancer. It's been literally a decade affair. So that's been very real for me. And my N=1 experience. It's I have a sensation when you say chemo. I'm I can feel all my veins burning.
Yep.
I can feel my, I walk into the bathroom and your hair is just falling out in clumps. You can't get up off the couch for weeks and weeks and weeks. Your body dies. Yep. And what the nature of chemo does is it stops cells that reproduce at a certain rate, like fingernails and hair and skin, and tumor cells, right? It's much like napalm in Vietnam, where they're just going to burn the jungle. Yep. They're going to burn the jungle. And again, I would just implore people to go do your due diligence and look up the efficacy across all types of cancer with chemotherapy and look at the percentage of life that is extended by. It's a very, very low percentage.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to be very clear here. We are not against chemo.
Right.
Because the truth is, it's a very difficult decision to make when you are presented in that situation. I don't wish that on anyone, obviously. And that individual, just like abortion, that person should make the decision, right? And have the education and the options to say, well, what am I going to do long term after this is over? What are my survival rates? How am I going to thrive in life? And what's interesting, going back to the vitamin IVs, a lot of this we saw too was in cancer research, that vitamin C was given a lot to cancer patients.
Know.
And the same thing. We have a friend who's a pharmacist who used to do this in the 80s for not only cancer patients, but for AIDS patients.
Yes.
Because they were giving chemo to AIDS patients in the 80s and they were killing them with this.
The Dallas Buyers Club.
Yes.
So what happened was he was giving vitamin C IVs to these chemo patients, basically these AIDS patients, and keeping them alive longer. And so he has all the research. He went for grant money. He went the official route, and he got shot down. And he could not figure out why. No one wanted to buy into this idea that this should be an adjunct therapy. And if you look at the cost return on vitamin C versus a chemo drug, and you know why.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you what my bills were.
What were my bills?
Usually $18,000 a week.
Fuck, man.
And this is your insurance paying this?
This is my insurance paid a portion of all this. I was very, very lucky with my whole insurance situation. It's another story, but again, to go back to this, the platform in which our medical system functions. I struggle with this. I don't want to be mad at the game.
Sure, no.
This is the game we're playing right now. It's incentivized. Doctors get paid when they work with you when they're sick. They don't get paid to keep you healthy.
Right.
And that's just what we have to work on changing. Right. And as thought leaders, we can scream and be like, oh, how fucked up is it? It's so terrible. I hate this. I hate this situation that I'm in right now. It's like, that's that's victim mentality. Yeah. So through thought leadership, through education, through spreading this word, it's really important that people hear these stories. I watched Dallas Buyers Club and remember thinking, I'm like, is there going to be a big movement? Because this is like mainstream Hollywood media. They're basically saying this guy was kept alive through vitamin C, IVs, and zinc. In Mexico, are we not going to start doing this for everybody? I mean, it was amazing to me. And it's still very, very fringe.
Yeah.
Well, it's very fringe. My parents would never be like, oh, yeah, let's go get some vitamin IVs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's crazy about it, I like the way you said the game, because I always speak in those terms. Like, there's game that's there, and we just prefer to play our own game and create our own game.
Yep. Yes.
But the whole idea that, like, we were talking about, like, we have two missions. One of them is to create the new health insurance. We want to call it health assurance. The other one's to save soil, right? And, provide free food for people and all that stuff. And not necessarily like giving food, but like provide the education so that you can grow your own food.
Yeah.
Because what else do you need? If you have food and healthcare,
you have health.
If you have food and health, then you're good, right? Yeah. And food is health. So, but the idea is that, like, you can't really blame a doctor for not knowing those things, because they're not incentivized to know those things.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, all that matters is, like, if they're taking insurance, and then insurance dictates when they're going to get paid, and they say, well, this is how you have to do it. Like, for me, if I was a doctor relying on insurance to pay me, I can go home and go study all this other stuff, but it's worthless because I can't even practice that way.
Yeah, that's the other downfall. So I like what you said about changing the approach to incentivize them to keep someone healthy. Now, this is where you have to undo the whole educational system. This is why I think you can blow up the education system, because you can't blow up health insurance right now. It's too strong. It's too powerful.
Totally.
You cannot go after it. It's ingrained into your freaking taxes right now, for crying out loud. Like, that's how powerful it is. So what you do is you create an environment where people have the power and the tools and the resources to put the health into their own hands. Because I think what we looked at was initially saying, how could you retrain all these doctors and these practitioners to look at health in a different light? You would have to basically create a pandemic-like experience with that type of marketing approach to basically re-brainwash and re-institutionalize the doctors. And I'm telling you right now, that's not going to happen because it didn't happen in the past 2 years.
Well, you'd have to, you have to realize that when that doctor chooses to go outside of standard of care, they risk losing their license and their livelihood.
And they still have hundreds of thousands of school debt to pay, right? So and that's sad.
But I like what you said, because here's what they tried to do a couple years ago. So Medicare has this thing called CMS. It's the Center for Medicare Services. And what it is it's the reimbursement bureau that tells you how much you're going to get reimbursed for your services you provide to your patients, right? You can get reimbursed more for like knee braces and back braces and TENS units than you could office visits. So the incentivization was a lot of like, let's throw in all these unneeded modalities for no reason. CMS is like, well, we're not reimbursing this preventative stuff. So they shut it down. And doctors are like, so you mean to expect that we get paid for just preventing people from even seeing us? How are we going to make money? That was the issue. So all these doctors got up and roar about it. This was like 2014, 15. And they said, no, we're going to scrap it. Because literally they're about to change it from pay for service to pay for showing us how healthy you're getting your patients.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the patient said, well, it's not our fault that the patients are eating like crap, that they're not sleeping well, that they're going to fast food restaurants.
Yeah.
They were blaming each other. Because the patient comes and says, well, the doctor doesn't know anything. He doesn't listen to me, or she doesn't listen to me. And they just give me a bunch of pills and I don't know why they're doing it. And it's like, okay, well, who's going to hold each other accountable? And that's the issue right now, is that the accountability gets signed off. For example, the country of Brazil literally was given by J&J the opportunity to get free vaccinations, quote unquote vaccinations, of the COVID-19 vaccination in the past year, 2020, if Brazil accepted liability for any side effects that were going to occur after the administration of those inoculations. What's interesting is Brazil said no. You look at the liability and the accountability and you say, well, somebody has to be held accountable for someone's health. Pharma doesn't want it, even though they administer you something that's supposed to protect someone from their sickness. And then you have these doctors that don't hold themselves accountable. So then you're left saying, well, it's the patient once again. And so that's where we're looking at saying, right, if the patient had the power to decide what they want to do with their own body, it changes the entire game.
Yep.
Right.
I think it's also like, it's interesting, this model. You're talking about the model. I'm immediately seeing the holes that pop up.
Okay.
Because the doctor, their schedule now, the frequency at which they see people, the number of people they need to stay solid, right? To stay in the green. That's where, to me, and I think we're seeing so many coaches out there, so many health coaches, gut health experts, sleep experts, functional medicine health coaches, is that people do need time to make behavior change. And that is not going to be a doctor. Like, that's why, for years and years and years, when I had time in my schedule, it was like an hour a week, 2 hours a month of just hand holding and talking with, how are your emotions? Are you doing sleep hygiene? Are you putting your blue blockers on at night? And that is a role that also needs to be figured into that model, because we know how hard behavior change is.
And it almost has to be, well, that's why the only way to really be somewhat good at it as a practitioner is to make it fun, right? Because then people are like, well, this is fun, I want to keep doing this, right? And so that's the trick. But two of us, this small office, can only take care of so many people, right? So how can you get a hospital to do that, right? Like that.
So this is what's funny, is that when we started off in business, we quickly grew. And everyone loved what we were doing because of the approach, and said, well, can you be here in LA? Can you be here in New York?
Where did you guys start?
We started here.
2 blocks down,
just 2 blocks down the road, actually. And so we started off in a room that was about 100 square feet.
It was literally a yoga studio.
It was a yoga studio. It was a broom closet inside a heated yoga studio. That's why we started.
111
square foot in the shape of a triangle, and we packed it. We packed it every single day.
And
we had house music. We were making the drinks. We had the IVs.
I was making drinks on the floor.
Like, it was we were so busy, and the yoga studio was like, guys, y'all got to get out of here. And so we said, all right, cool. So we found
it was real funny, because they're like, people had never done yoga. They walk in during like Shavasana, and they're like, what are these guys doing? Like, they're supposed to be exercising, but they're just laying there.
Or they would go up to the teacher and say, hey, is John and Baldo here? I want an
And they're
IV.
like
I want an
in branch of
IV.
us.
And they're like, we're in the middle of class here. Like, well, yeah, we're just laying down. Like, they're not doing anything. Can you help me? And like,
no.
they're like, dude, like, no. And so, the teacher's like, we like you guys, but y'all got to get the F out
But you're
here.
blowing up Shavasana.
So that guy's cool. So we did our own thing. We came over here. So anyway, a lot of the IVs and all that, like, it was cool because we got to the point where, we really like customized the IVs based off of what their needs were, including lab work. And so it really took on another level. And then we said like, but we don't want to do like LA and Miami. We tried to even do Houston and like San Antonio. And like, it's just like, you wear yourself thin.
I mean, we tried doing stuff down the road.
Yeah.
Here
And it's just doing multiple locations and trying to recreate this magic. It was like, we can't duplicate ourselves. And so we looked at it and said, okay, how can we extend ourselves and the message? That's really what the key is, right? So we leaned on people in our community, and the health and wellness community embraced us because the biohackers understood us. But then the health and wellness people said, well, I do this stuff anyway. This is part of my routine in order to keep myself healthy. So then we said, oh, well, that's interesting because like this is part of what we do. What else do you do?
Yeah.
And you started hearing more people say, well, I do this and I do this and I do. And I'm like, wow, like, where do you hear this stuff? And like, I hear it from podcasts. I hear it from this book and this guy I follow and this lady I listen to. And I'm like, that's really interesting. Like, you understand this stuff the way we do. Cool. So like, well, let's do this together. And so we quickly realized you can use the network of people across the media and the internet.
And that's how this network.
And this is how this network decides. Because really, you say, well, we don't have to say it because Freddie's saying it. Freddie's telling his story, and we don't have to say it over and over again. And the way you say the message and you get it across clearly is you don't come in telling people they're wrong and tell them they don't know anything and that they've been doing it all bad this whole time. You tell them like, no, we love you. Let me tell you a story about how someone did it right. And then maybe you can tell that story to someone else. And maybe somebody says, you know what? I think I can do that too. And then all of a sudden this ripple effect starts. And that grassroots campaign is how we build our networking, how we build our marketing, how you built your podcast up, right?
And the thing about it is that it might be a slower growth, but it's permanent.
And I think that's
right.
Like,
and that's you can't ask for anything else because then that just means you just work at your own pace and you do your own thing and you allow love to come into it as opposed to like, fuck, I need to do all this. The word I need to or I have to, just stop doing that.
and so when we look at extending our network along with everyone else's network, it's already set up. The health assurance is here, right? Because you have so many resources and tools than you ever did before, right? John Mackey said it's the greatest time to be a human like 2 years ago. I still believe it because the opportunity you have to grow and to build up your body is incredible. You have how many more tools at your service now?
Incredible.
Right?
It's unreal. It's an exciting time to be alive. I mean, I say that all the time. I post it on my Instagram. I'm like, my apartment, I have a wall of red light therapy. I have an infrared sauna in my closet.
Yeah.
I have pulsed electromagnetic field and frequency delivery. I have an ice bath on my porch. I have an ionic foot bath. I could go on, but I have tailored my life to feel well.
Yep.
Right? I'm not upset. I'm not living my life as to optimize. These things are just laid into my day. So where someone might take, 2 hours to watch Netflix, I'm absorbing a book while I'm upgrading my cellular voltage. Or I'm starting my morning as opposed to doom scrolling on my phone.
Yep.
I'm doing 3 minutes of centered breathing and deliberate cold exposure and converting my white fat to brown adipose tissue around my organs. Like, I'm building this vessel so when I'm engaged with other people, I'm showing up at 110%. And there's a degree of a light that you exude when you do this work.
Yeah.
And it makes listen, selfishly, it makes my quality of life better. There's more joy because I remember, I don't know if you guys remember, I remember like going to lunch with my dad. My dad had an engineering firm, and we'd go to Wendy's and I would get like the quad burger with the fries and the frosty. I remember coming back from lunch and I would be like struggling not to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Struggling.
Yeah.
Do you remember eating and being so tired?
Yep.
Just was like, that doesn't happen anymore. I eat, I get energized, I get up. I'm like, let's build something. Let's create. Let's go make a shit ton of money. Let's go be in the sun. Let's go to like Costa Rica and work for a month. Like that is, And I live a very minimal life because I've chosen to not have a $40,000 lease on a car.
Right.
I've taken that money, I've reappropriated it to health and building the platform that supports my energy and my highest best being.
I love that.
I like that you gave the Wendy's example. Someone came in yesterday and I was eating ATX food court. I was eating 2 tacos and man, like, man, that looks pretty good. It's kind of healthy, but it's probably not enough food. I'm gonna go to Wendy's now. And I was like, what do you get at Wendy's? It's like, oh, well, the number 7 with like, extra large fries. And I'm probably gonna skip the Coke today. And I was like, okay. After getting a weight loss shot.
Oh, really?
After getting a weight loss shot.
God, Buzz. And you know what's funny about that? So another story.
No judgment.
No judgment, but another
Sure.
story. No, quick story. So a person who wanted to lose weight, once again, came in when we first started in that tiny broom closet, like tiny bloom closet. Rent was $350 a month. Like it was a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
This lady wanted to lose weight and wanted to sign up for like, I think 4 months worth of shots, which meant she was going to pay for like, I don't know, 4 months of rent for us, basically.
Yes.
And for starting off, that is needed. We're sitting across from each other. She has this wad of cash in between us, like literally stacks of 100s and 20s. And she says, this is how serious I am. The past month, she's been coming and getting shots and saying, the shots aren't working. The shots aren't working. Comes in, I'm like, I don't think you're doing the work. Honestly, it sounds like you're not eating everything we talked about doing. Like, maybe you're going to Wendy's for all I know, and you're blaming the shots, right? Same approach. And she's like, no, I don't believe you. I really don't believe you. Throws the wad of cash right there. She goes, this is how serious I am about doing this. I said, I'm not going to take your money. Literally was pushing it back. I said, I'm not going to take your money because it's a waste of both our time. And then she said, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. 80 pounds later, she's no longer a diabetic. That was 6 to 8 months later. And that was the happiest day, the first time I ever got to tell someone you're no longer a diabetic. The same day she had told me right before that, I lost my 80th pound. I did it. And I was like, that's badass. But
that's what she came in celebrating.
That's
right?
what she came in celebrating.
Yeah. And we were like, we got some better news to tell you.
Yeah, you're no longer diabetic. And Unreal. It was so cool. So once again, our priorities, like you said, you reappropriated. I love that term because the investment of it is this. When you have all the money in the world, and we've seen it, where people are so successful, when they're sick, all they care about is their health. And they're like, I will spend every last dime I have in order to get healthy because I love my life. And that's all people want. Like, you want to live forever because you're thinking, I love the life I live now. It's a dream. It's a reality. I don't know what this is.
It's like people say, like, why would you want to live forever? It's like, why wouldn't you if you feel great, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I'm enjoying my life right now. I really, really am. It took me almost 40 years to get to this point. And now I'm thinking like, well, I want to stay in this shape just like we are. The selfish part is not selfish. What you said, there's nothing about selfishness. Yeah. It is because if no one tells you to take care of yourself, who the hell is going to do it? Mm-hmm. You have one body. You got to take care of it. And the thing is, I'm going to die of natural causes. I am not going to die of diabetes. I'm not going to die of Alzheimer's. I'm not going to die of cancer. And all that stuff runs in my family. Yeah. Because, it's there. I've seen it. And I'm like, well, it's not going to happen to us. And that's really what it is. But I stopped living like that. And I said, no, let's thrive. What does it look like to be able to do handstands when you're 90 years old?
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. I just had the oldest man. He was 87. He was the oldest man to climb Mount Everest.
How old was he?
87.
87?
Yeah. I have similar stories in the community I roll in. And it never ceases to amaze me. It's like, we have this projection of what we think aging is going to be like because we watched our grandparents or our parents aging in a certain way. And I think one of the valuable things about going through chronic illness or cancer is you quickly realize how valuable that is, that level of vitality and how important it is. And once it's gone, nothing else matters.
Yeah,
that's right.
Nothing. And so it is MSW Lounge it's a lifestyle.
Yeah,
it's not like come here when you're sick.
No, definitely not.
I'm sure you guys see that too.
Now we do. We see that a lot now.
Right. Right. We're in a pandemic. Yeah. So now, and I've thought a lot about this. I really have. And again, to pull out all the judgment, but to meet people where they're at right now in the world, the conversation we're not having online is people overestimate how healthy they are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Even myself,
I
don't want to say I got caught with my pants down, but like when I talk about this a lot lately, like 3 weeks ago, I got COVID and I was I was being responsible and careful, and, you know, I'm using the technology I have at home. I'm eating well, but I had really backed off my supplement protocol that was kind of like frontline doctors, like the zinc and the C and the NAC. And I was like, you know what? I'm good. I don't really, and I will take time off from vitamins sometimes just because I'm like, I don't want to live in a couple times over the pandemic. I actually went down to like HCl.
Okay.
I'm like, that's it.
Wow.
Only because going through Lyme and cancer, I've had times where I've traveled home to my mom's house for Christmas and I've had 2 grocery bags. They're like, oh boy, Freddie's supplement bags. You know, there's literally, it's a joke. But I really like, it feels good to take time away from that. And I sort of let my guard down a little bit. So even myself, going through that experience and having 3 days of, you know, my personal experience was the body pain and the neuralgia in my spine and neck was like a 10 for like 3 to 4 days. No lung involvement, never lost taste or smell. But it was, you know, I was like, wow, until you're sick, until it's on you, you're like, you again are reminded how important it is to keep up our vital bioterrain.
Yes.
So like speak to that a little bit, what people are doing to really maintain robust immunity through some of the IVs you guys are offering.
I love how you asked, what are you doing to stay healthy?
Yeah.
That's the question that we should be asking. What are you doing to stay healthy?
That's the one problem that I've had with this whole situation. It's like, how come that message about like, at a minimum, like these are what some people are doing to stay healthier and like highlight that because there's so much, right? And all they care to talk about is how many people died and how many people are suffering. And it's like, but the ones that are not, like, I want to know. I want to do those things as well, so to give myself a better chance. Yeah. Right. And we get that here, but like the majority of the people, 80% of the people or more, don't get that information, right? Like they don't know.
Yeah.
I think they do a disservice to like and I think everybody feels this on a level. I don't care where you stand. I'm very open-minded, whatever you want to do for your health. Correct. I think that we underestimate like how intelligent everybody is. Yeah. And people know when they're being pandered to and they're being lied to and they're being, it's a both and conversation. Yeah. Right. So for every person that, you know, they want to highlight, and actually it's really interesting. I'm like, I don't know why people aren't calling this out, but the media is straight up death shaming. Yeah. Yeah. Like when someone dies of COVID that's relatively young and, you know, they're a teacher, there's a featured article and they're like, look what can happen. Well, there's millions of people. There's 80 to 100 million people in the US who have had COVID and had a very healthy, robust immune response to this virus. So we could also highlight those people and say what's working. Yeah. But it's that go to war. Listen, there's this great leader that I follow who kind of breaks down the sentiment and the why. And he's like, it's been a long time since we've been a go to war society. Pick up your gun and take arms and go die for your country. If you told everybody that now in the country, it's sad. But I don't think a lot of people would fight for their freedom. I don't think we realize all the gifts that we have. But we're using that mentality. It's like, do this, go do this medical intervention because we say so. Yep. And we're smarter than that now. Yep. We need more. We need more like collaboration, love, teamwork, science, explanations. So
beautiful. Beautiful. Well said. Well said. I appreciate that. So to answer your question about what are you doing in order to maintain a robust health?
Yes.
I think there's 5 tools. It's very simple. There's sleep, mindfulness, nutrition, flexibility, and exercise that needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. These are non-negotiables for any individual on a daily routine. Mm-hmm. This is the most simplest approach I can imagine. Once again, sleep, mindfulness, nutrition, flexibility, exercise. The only thing that's going to cost you money out of all that is your nutrition. And right now, like you said, I could spend a bunch of money on a bunch of crap that doesn't help me stay healthy and serve me, or I can spend a bunch of money on things that is going to make me superhuman.
And if you learn how to grow your own food,
if you learn how to grow food, then essentially it doesn't cost you anything after a while. So grow your own food, and then you're self-sustainable. So really the message is self-sustainability. How do you self-sustain your robust health? And really what it is you do things on a daily basis that add to your health, not take away. You add. So imagine I think about sleep all the time and how I'm going to get more of it and how I'm going to get deeper sleep, right? So I do a practice that leads up to better sleep at night, and I track my sleep. With biometrics now, we can track sleep. Imagine mindfulness now is meditating, prayer, breath work every day. Like it's the most important thing I might do for my sanity. And if I don't breathe correctly, I'm not healthy. These are essentials now. We talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I talk about essentials for your body to function. You need to learn how to breathe correctly. And most people don't know how to. And then on a side note, here's what we've been talking about. Literally, when people come in here and they want to get healthier, I say, here's the thing. You can show up every week and get a vitamin IV and you'll be fine. We'll put NAC and glutathione in there. It's a non-negotiable, right? That's what we are. I'm getting my IV today with NAD. NAD's non-negotiable for me at this point every week and probably getting to you as well.
Yeah.
So then I say, okay, cool. That's the easy part. You show up, we'll make something for you. We'll put everything in there. The glutathione, the NAC will help you. It's helped people's immune system this entire time. And vitamin D. Glutathione, NAC, vitamin D should be in everyone's supplementation. It's the non-negotiable at this point because it's better than zinc, quercetin, and vitamin C because it will actually save your life compared to vitamin C and zinc, which you should have been taking forever. Like it took a pandemic to get everyone to take their vitamins at this point. And even then they just started taking the past 6 months. So the accountability is, okay, when you're not taking your vitamins, what else are you doing? Okay. The flexibility and the exercise. Everyone knows how to exercise, but everyone overdoes that. Okay. And it's actually more detrimental to them. I would probably say find something that suits your needs, even if it's walking 3-4 times a week, fine. Right. But the flexibility is bend over and touch your toes. Do chest openers. Stretch your neck out for crying out loud, man. Get up and walk around. Don't sit at your desk all day, right? So those things are the essentials that we don't do. And we have a stretch lab down the road. People have to hire someone to have them stretch them out.
I know. Isn't that weird?
I mean, it feels great.
It does feel good.
They're incredible. Don't get me wrong. They're amazing.
I've
They're
done
amazing.
stretch lab, yeah.
But it's an incredible concept because when we're talking to the owners, they're telling us, I'm like, I would have never thought about that. But yeah a stretchologist.
I want to tap into the sleep part. Like that's, for me, it's priority. Right?
Yeah,
like
there you go.
Me too.
I did a sleep masterclass, like, on that app, masterclass.
Yeah.
And
do you remember who he did Sleep as a Skill? Do you remember who it was?
I can see
I
his
don't
face.
remember.
I don't know his name.
The same. And I don't even remember the name of the guy on the masterclass. I could probably pull it up here in a second. But there's a quote on there that he says on there, and there's tons of sleep stats all day long, and he's referencing all the sleep stats. But the one thing that summarizes all of it is he says, sleep is the best health insurance you can ever have.
Yeah.
Right. The idea that it's like the ultimate biohack to anything. Like just sleep more. Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he references something with vaccines. He references a study done on the effectiveness of vaccines in general, not COVID, not necessarily just, or maybe COVID, but just vaccines in general. And there was a study done with a group of people that were sleeping X amount of hours, getting a vaccine, sleeping another X amount of hours, getting vaccines. And basically anything under 6 hours, vaccines, and then studying those effectiveness is almost like non-existent effectiveness of those vaccines. So it's like those vaccines aren't even working for you if you're not even getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
And then the opposite was true too. Not only like if they were sleeping more, the effectiveness of the vaccine was almost like 80 to 90%, just in general. But then it was also immune system was just much higher even without vaccines or without any other medication other than sleep. And that study had been replicated over 15 different times in 7 different countries. And it's the idea, it's the most important thing, right? So anytime, like even since day one that we've started, anytime like I feel a little itchy scratch in my throat, I was like, vitamin C IV, I'm gonna sleep more. And that's always been my solution.
Up fine the next day.
And then the next day is like, oh, sweet, let's go.
And I want to make a good point too. We've been essential, which means we've been front line since day one. And that includes Baldo too. When the pandemic started last year, our whole staff left us, right? Because for
you didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah. And
who knew?
We had no choice. We
went back to 2 people.
We went back to me and him and said, okay, you work the front, you answer the calls, I'll go and start the IVs. We thought about even shutting down at one point because we were like, I don't know what we need to do. Like, do we need to just see what's going to happen? People said, this is the most important thing I'll do for my health today. Don't you think about shutting down? I said, okay. So we started giving IVs to everyone.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty of times that I felt run down, especially this. We see COVID patients face to face. So, I mean, you imagine how many germs and bugs we've seen in the past 2 years, and we've been fine. Doesn't mean that when I'm not run down at the end of the day, or I have a sore throat, or I have a congestion. I mean, there's been plenty of times I even think, I'm like, oh crap, did I finally catch it?
Yeah.
You know, and then I do my stuff. I go to the sauna. Like infrared sauna is a non-negotiable for me on a weekly basis at this point. I can tell you right now, I've literally coughed out viruses out of my throat because I went there for 40 minutes and sat in infrared sauna. Okay.
Yeah.
But I breathe right. That's the key. I don't just sit there on my phone.
Yeah.
I don't sit there with my earpods on, just talking one. No, I am there present. So then the IVs, oh my gosh. Ice baths are non-negotiable for me. IVs, non-negotiable. I mean, here's the thing right now. Glutathione, that's what we told everyone to get the glutathione levels up. And most people are deficient in that, just like vitamin D. So I'm like, okay, if I take vitamin D pill daily or injection, because you can get like 100,000 units of vitamin D here in an injection, which is incredible. Yeah, up to that. And then IVs, that's what's helping us.
Yeah.
Because even when you are kind of run down, I'll go with an IV. I'll detox all that out. So I'll go home and I'll feel achy. I'll feel kind of like, oh man. And so this is how I know I'm fine. When I wake up the next day after a good night's rest, because melatonin is made during sleep, which is the biggest antioxidant we make, stronger than glutathione.
Yeah.
So imagine if I get a good night's rest, and NAD always gives me good rest. Always. I sleep incredible after NAD IVs. I will go home. I'll maybe even detox achy. Next day I wake up, feel incredible. And I said, I did it. My body took care of whatever I was battling. Yeah. And that's what your body's supposed to do. It's called innate intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? And all of us are our own healers. And so the truth is, if we go looking for other people to heal us, I'll tell you right now, I'm not a healer. There's no way in hell I'm a healer. Because there's tons of times I'll tell people, like, you just got to remove the things that are holding you back. And you develop new habits that actually serve you. And when that happens, it might be in different forms, because there's different ways to get healthy. Vitamin IVs are just one of the many ways to do it. It just happens to be a very quick, effective biohack way to get all your nutrients, because...
And it's also one that people feel, because people want that instant gratification, right? Like,
yeah, I think I mentioned on the phone yesterday, I sent my friend over, Kristen, who's been having just a different experience, recovering at a different rate. You know, she's having the thing where her heart rate will spike in the middle of the night. And so she's almost a month out. But she said yesterday, she goes, I went to MSW. She's like, I got the double NAD push. And she's like, it was the first time my brain has turned back on.
Yep.
And I know, you know, from people,
awesome.
people in my experience and in my community, I've watched people be long haulers.
Yeah.
You know, I've watched people have I've had friends pass away from the virus.
Yeah.
You know, heartbreaking young people, 40-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I've watched everybody deal with it so differently. And what I come back to is, again, we overestimate how healthy we are.
Yep.
Because people think, if you ask most people, they'd be like, oh, I'm doing good.
Yep.
You know, I'm doing good.
Yep.
Well, have you looked at your heavy metal load? Have you ever looked at mercury? You know, because that's a huge compromiser. Have you looked at your mineral? Have you done a hair mineral analysis? Have you looked at your antioxidant? Have you looked at your telomere length and your genetics?
Yeah.
You know, I've seen telomere lengths on athletes like 80-year-olds, 70-year-olds.
Yep.
I know people think, and this is not against the CrossFit community.
Nope.
I love functional movement, but you'd think because you can lift all that weight. There's a very famous CrossFitter right now. I can't think of his name right now. He's a doctor who was just hospitalized for COVID, and they ended up taking out a chunk of his lung.
Oh, wow.
This guy he's a Spartan athlete. There's nobody more ripped, you know.
But he's not healthy.
But ripped and muscular does not
healthy.
equate with health.
I'll say this right now. So that's a perfect example. So I will say right now, I can make the case that most endurance athletes, and that includes CrossFitters, marathon runners, Ironmen or Iron women, whatever you want to say that as, and are all unhealthy. Like a majority of them are metabolically broken.
Well, they're definitely overestimating how healthy they are.
Because they are basically draining their batteries and never replenishing it correctly, because we hear their nutrition. Here's the other thing. You overestimate, whatever you want to call it, blood sugar. Let's just take this as a prime example. Okay, so the Ironman, I guess, event that happened last week was sponsored by a couple of companies that did glucose readers. Okay, so one of the guys who was leading the race wore a glucose reader the entire time. So you could track it in live on Facebook. You could see his blood sugar in real time during the Ironman race. Mm-hmm. Towards the end of the race, he was at 167. He finished the race at like 180 something, which meant that he was like a diabetic finishing the race, but he hadn't had anything to eat.
Yeah.
And what's incredible about it is we have our nutrition all Wrong.
Yeah.
Well, completely wrong. Intermittent fasting, you should be prolonged fasting. Like, really, right? And then people take keto and they're still eating cheese. And I'm like, here's the thing. Some people are good with cheese, some people aren't. But at the same time, is it inflammatory? Yeah, it probably is. Right? The way it's processed. Is it hard to digest? Probably is on the body, right? But yet,
that doesn't mean don't enjoy it.
Don't enjoy it. But the truth is, I'm like, we have it all wrong, because I see marathoners who are like fat, like overweight. And I'm like, how do you run 26 miles straight and you're still fat? Because they don't understand nutrition and they don't understand what blood sugar is actually really meant for. Because we just
pushing their body way too much.
Because think about it. What if an endurance athlete's blood sugar was supposed to be closer to 200 and it wasn't supposed to be in the hundreds or 80? And I'm thinking, like, then that's what they need in order to get through the race. Because where are they getting their energy from?
Yeah.
But imagine the same thing with cholesterol. What if you're fasting? Your cholesterol's through the roof. Why? Because you're pulling reserves from your fat cells in your liver, which you want. I took my labs right after a 6-day water fast. Guess what my cholesterol was? Through the roof.
Really?
But guess what was through the roof? My CoQ10.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I have fasting protocols, but
so that's another thing we do. Fasting is beneficial.
I'm a huge,
But the thing about it is that people know about stress being detrimental to you, and I think that's also underestimated. But exercise is stress. It's a lot of stress, right? And so we were talking to someone the other day, and they're like, "I don't think I've taken a day off from the gym in probably over 2 months now."
Yeah,
and I'm like,
every day they work out.
But you have to rest.
That's their stress relief.
It's like you have to rest, right? And it's almost like or else you're using the exercise to not confront something else.
Okay.
Right. And then that becomes kind of dangerous, because we talked to, someone the other day, someone close to me, and passed out in a public setting. And she had mentioned that it was like the second time that it had happened. And then she would I want to get all my blood work. And the doctor said it was all fine. And then he checked the blood work, and it was like, you are pretty much fine, but
there's all this other stuff.
But what's going on? Are you anxious? Are you overworking? And so it's she just never shut down. So it's almost like the body at some point says well, you're never taking a time off. I'm taking it now. Right.
Totally.
And I'm just going to do this. And so then people freak out, right? Because it's like, this person's passed out. It's like, yeah, but all it is the body saying I need a break. And then I'm going to take it now, because I don't know when you're going to do it. And you're obviously not going to do it when you say you're going to do it. So I'm just going to do it now. What's the difference between now or later?
Yeah. Prime example is a couple of real quick hits. So working out is overdoing it sometimes. So we had a person who worked out for 2 hours straight. Typical 1 hour workout at the HIIT, and then did some runs afterwards, right? They did a blood work right afterwards here with us. And one of the labs we measured was troponin levels. Now, troponin levels are normally ordered in the emergency department for a heart attack or suspecting of a heart attack. And so if it's slightly elevated at all, you had cardiac muscle damage that looks like a heart attack. Well, guess what was elevated in this endurance athlete? Troponin. The lab calls us and says, hey, tell us about this patient of yours. What do you want to know? They're very active, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, did they just have a heart attack? What are you talking about? They're healthy. I just saw them working out for 2 hours straight. They do this, we work out every day. And they're like, well, they're kind of overdoing it. She works out so hard, she literally causes a minor heart attack every time she works out. Wow. Told it to her face, and she's like, I don't believe that, but that's incredible. And I'm like, are you serious? You don't think this is a warning sign?
Yeah.
And she's like, but I got to work out. I can't miss my workouts. You understand? This is my stress relief. Did you not hear what I just said? You were killing your heart with your workouts.
Yeah.
Then on the flip side, the last few weeks, this is what funny thing I tell people. The prescription for them sometimes is, can you sit still for 20 minutes and not do anything?
This is our prescription.
This is our prescription to people literally face to face at the end of labs. Can you sit there for 20 minutes? Yeah, I can do that without looking at your phone. Their eyes get bigger. They say, I cannot do that. I can tell you right now, 8 out of 10 people straight up tell me, I can't do that.
At least that's their first response.
That's their first response.
Hi, friends. I hope you're loving the show. Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. One of the consistent biohacks in my home is red light therapy, or photobiomodulation, if you want to sound fancy at a dinner party. Now, red lights have been clinically shown to help with a plethora of health benefits, including increased energy, better circulation, increased testosterone production, workout recovery, hair growth, and even help with fine lines and wrinkles on your skin. There are even multiple studies showing benefits with Alzheimer's patients. Personally, this is something I recommend for most of my clients to have in their home for its incredible benefits and relatively low cost. Now, from my research, LightPath LED continues to innovate their designs, and they include multiple wave panels and pulsing, with this initial research showing a greater depth of penetration and benefit to mitochondrial health, which, if you're a fan of the podcast, you know this is the moving target when it comes to wellness. Mind the mitochondria. So check out lightpathled.com and use code BeautifullyBroken, all lowercase, for a 10% discount in the checkout. The inventor and founder, Scott Kennedy, is a true gem of a human being and stands behind every light that he sells. This is a Beautifully Broken podcast, stamp of approval, 5 stars. Now let's get back to the show.
I'm very aware of the opioid hit that I get from this. I really am. I can feel when I walk into another room and I don't bring my phone. You know, I'm like, I think about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's happening over there?
But at least you're aware of that.
Yeah,
right?
I'm aware of it, but I also, I'm aware that, if that's my level of awareness with it.
What's everyone else's is
Yeah,
non-existent.
Yeah,
But it's like when you fast, right? Like, I don't know how long of a fast you do, and you've passed the hunger stage, and I'm not hungry, and you already know that I'm not going to eat for the next whatever X amount of time, but you still grab food, right? And they're like,
sure.
And you're like, oh wait, no, I'm not eating right now.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
So it's such a habit thing. So I never feel guilty about that, right? Because that's important, to not feel the guilt about I'm such a bad person because I keep grabbing my phone.
Of
it's
course.
fine. It's a habit. It's just more now that you're aware, just fucking let it go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I tell people this. I say, this is very easy to do. I ask people, what's the first thing you do in the morning when you wake up? And it's coming to. They're like, well, I turn off my alarm and then I, get up, make coffee. And I said, no. What the immediate thing right after when you wake up, what are you doing? Oh, I look at my emails and my text messages for 20 minutes. Sometimes I said, at least the Instagram, no, don't do it. Okay.
And they always come up with oh, well, I don't always do it.
I don't always do it. I'm like, don't do it. And they're like, well, for how long? I was like, can you 8 o'clock? 8 a.m. Why get up at 5? I'm like, okay, well, they're like 7 a.m. Okay, I can do that. Okay, that's fine. Airplane mode. And then you turn it on whenever. I said, those emails will be there for you. Those text messages will be there for you. I'm telling you, it's not going anywhere. Do you need to start off your day that way? And so it goes back to the stress thing. This is what happened. The reason that you probably got it was not only the supplement deal, but you let down one of your guards for just a minute. And here's the non-negotiable part. You have a shield, which is your immune system, and it slowly chips away whenever you don't add to it. So when people get COVID after 2 years of being healthy, they always say, I had the most stress I ever had leading up to when I got sick. Yeah, and it's a simple thing. So I'm like, well, stress isn't going away, bro. You're thinking well, I haven't been doing my breath work. I haven't done my saunas. I'm like, I know, man. I know. But this is the cool thing. What we've learned is this. The recovery aspect is that people will be fine if they do all those things.
Yeah.
They really will. You shouldn't have to die from this. And we've learned is all the people recovered, we've been seeing it personally firsthand. Glutathione and NAC has shortened the duration of their symptoms considerably. Most healthy people, and I'm saying healthy people, out of those 5 tools, let's say you do 4 out of 5 every day. I would say even those people, if they get COVID, they'll feel bad for about 4 days to maybe up to a week. Then it's up to a week and a half for the next stage of healthy people. And then it's up to 2 weeks for the next healthy. So if someone feels bad for 3-4 months afterwards, they were really unhealthy. And they don't realize it because of whatever reason. And we mentioned many of them right now. But then think about this. There's a recovery aspect that no one accounts for. Your adrenals. Your adrenals are firing in times of stress. They produce cortisol and adrenaline. Okay. Regardless of whether your stress is in the form of working out or whether you're battling COVID, you produce the same amount of cortisol and adrenaline, if not more, and more stress. Okay. Negative thoughts can do the same thing. So how many people have been sitting at home, eating processed sugar, drinking processed alcohol, watching processed media, having processed thoughts that basically inflame them? And they're too backed up to detoxify this. Yeah. So every time people come in, I say, you have to emphasize your detox systems. And that's a huge part of immunity. I mean,
and the stress is going to increase cortisol, right? I think for the most part, that's a very, very common knowledge. And
my friend who was in here, on her trip to Austin, she had all her insight tracker work done, and her cortisol was through the roof. So that's the different recovery timelines. We're also seeing that right now.
Yeah, and cortisol, it's fight or flight or freeze, right? That's your body's reaction. When cortisol's up, you're stressed out. I got to run away from this danger, from this potential death danger, right? I got to run away from this lion that's about to eat me, or I need to hide, or I need to freeze or something, right? Something's going to happen. And so at that point, biochemically, nothing else matters. Right. Other than like, I need to run away from this danger. So when I say nothing else matters, that also means immunity doesn't matter. Right. Because I need to get away from here. And so all our resources, so if you're not keeping yourself healthy, you're not putting the same nutrients that you want to complete the, like we always like to complete the cake of immunity, or to complete the cake of serotonin, to complete the cake of dopamine or whatever. All those nutrients are not being funneled to like, how do I fucking run away from here?
That makes sense. That makes sense, because like the cholesterol and the hormones, it's the same deal.
Yeah. And this is like, I need to run away from here. And so, and we've heard the phrase of like, the body doesn't know the difference between a real experience and one that's being experienced just in your thoughts. And so, yeah, of course, it's like if you're doing more for your immunity, but you're still stressed out, it's just going to go towards the, how do I run away from here?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a prime example of like the cholesterol deal. So what I didn't mention in my labs after the 6-day fast, my cholesterol is through the roof. My testosterone plummeted to like 100 and something. Because the thing is, my body said, like, you don't need testosterone. You're in survival mode.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it pulled all its cholesterol and put it to other places where I need it. I use cholesterol for energy at this point. That's ketosis.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for me, I tested, we did the same thing, but I tested 1 week after.
And there was a rebound
and my
effect.
testosterone was like up the
Through the roof.
Yeah.
And Dr. Pompa talks a lot about that.
The rebound effect?
The rebound effect after a 4 or 5 day water fast, or, he'll even talk about a 2 or 3 day dry fast.
Yeah.
And that yes, you're going to lose a little weight, but look at your muscle growth if you're lifting, on the other side of 30 days, and you're going to be stronger than you ever were because you get that rebound. One thing I want to just touch on, we've mentioned NAD a lot, and I would just love, in your words, why is NAD? It's pretty much like, I just was at the Upgrade conference in Orlando with Dave Asprey and Mercola and everybody. Everybody had an NAD product.
Yeah.
NAD intranasal. They had NAD gum with caffeine and nicotine, which was amazing, called Peak Gum. It was great. And it really did. I was like, oh, this is really great gum. Why are people adding this to IVs? Why is it so important? How does it work in the body to support the greater system?
Let me do a small analogy on that one. The one that I'd like to, hopefully people get this one. Bones being fractured or broken, right? Like the difference between that. Sometimes like when you have a fracture, it just lingers. And I've even heard people say like, it's better if you break it, because then that way it just starts to heal, right? Well, same thing happens with your cells. Sometimes you have cells that aren't the cells regenerate all the time. Yes. But sometimes you have cells that are not really dying off. They're just kind of like half efficient because they're not fully dead, but then that means that they're not 100% going.
They're like a zombie cell.
Yeah.
Or a senescent cell.
Correct. Exactly. And so then like you take NAD and it goes in there and like kills off like those half working cells, those zombie cells, so you can start regenerating. So you feel that, right? Like that, like a lot of times we always tell people you feel it where like you need it most. Like if you're really sore, you'll feel the NAD there, right? Like a lot of people feel it in their gut because everyone has gut issues, right?
Yes.
But COVID patients that have been recovered, they'll feel it in their lungs, right? And so it's going in there doing that at a really fast rate, and then the faster you drip it, the more you feel it, right? And so, but that's like I like to use that analogy. But
So it is a great analogy. I would actually make the case that NAD actually changes the zombies back into healthy cells. Yeah. That's what I would make the case. The same way autophagy and prolonged fasting does. It's rejuvenation.
Well, autophagy and prolonged fasting kind of does it through a NAD
pathway.
Yeah, so it activates
this is what it's the biochemical aspect is NAD. It's a long-term, I think, a nicotinic adenosine dinucleotide. And what it is, it's a way to make energy in the body. That's what NAD does. NAD makes ATP. Okay. ATP is our main currency of energy from our mitochondria. So mitochondria is the powerhouse of ATP production, and you have mitochondria cells within each one of your cells. So imagine you have a brain cell, you have a lot of mitochondria in there. You have a liver cell, you have a lot of mitochondria in there. The sole purpose of the mitochondria is to make you more energy to make that brain cell, that liver cell work better. Okay. Over time, things are going to wear down any type of cell's health. So sugar will kill a brain cell, a liver cell the same way. And essentially will kill the mitochondria inside those cells. So think about this. Sugar depletes NAD. Then sugar depletes your ability to make ATP. So if you lower your NAD intake and you increase your NAD, then all of a sudden now you're increasing your ATP, which means you feel incredible. And that's why when people get NAD IVs, NAD literally goes into the mitochondria, pumps out ATP and breathes life into it. So then it makes that cell healthier and it goes wherever the body needs it. So let's say you have a fatty liver, boom, it's going to the liver. Let's say you've had damage to your lungs from COVID, boom, it's going to the lungs and it's repairing it. It's making those mitochondrial cells healthier. And what's incredible is it happens in real time. That's why people feel uncomfortable during the IV. It's not because it causes nausea. It's because everyone has gut issues.
Wow.
And so I say, oh, you have nausea? You want to throw up? Oh, man, you have digestive issues. Because other people over here that said they have sinus issues, they feel it in their head. And you have rotator cuff issues, you feel it in your shoulder. And so what happens is if you repair everything and you replace and replenish your deficiencies, that's what supplementation is, then essentially you can optimize. So in biochemistry, every biohacker who wants to promote longevity is actually going towards one terminology. It's called mitochondrial biogenesis.
Yeah.
Now, this was discovered 30 years ago. Now, mitochondrial biogenesis has a precursor called mitochondrial rejuvenation. Now, just like this, there's a pathway. Down the NAD pathway, you do have ATP production, and that means there's a healthy circuit of energy flowing in and out of your mitochondria. Well, you have to clean up the debris, the damage, any type of toxin that is in your cells damaging that. And when that happens, guess what? The rejuvenation part happens. That's when your NAD's going in and detoxifying. That's when you're prolonged fasting. That's when you're ice bathing it, right? All those things matter. Resveratrol, same approach, right? And then when that happens and you clean everything up, you rejuvenated. You can make mitochondrial biogenesis occur now, where instead of cleaning up the mitochondria, you make new mitochondria. You spawn off the production of new healthy mitochondria, which is almost impossible at one point to think of, but now it is a straight reality. Our bodies can morph and reproduce on its own if you give it the opportunity to do so, which means you have to get in the right metabolic state. And that's only reserved for people who can optimize after they clean up all their nutritional deficiencies, overridden all their genetic mutations, and reduced and lived basically an anti-inflammation lifestyle.
There's a really cool book, easy to read, fun to read, The Mitochondria and the Future of Medicine by Dr. Lee No. Fantastic book. It's so easy. It's all Star Wars references too. So it makes it fun and easy. But it's all just about the secret lives of mitochondria and how powerful they are. And honestly, how easy it is for us to like help them. And then CoQ10 is another one that doubles the value of NAD.
Right. So think about this, going back to your IV when we started off.
Right. Formulations.
All of this is mitochondrial formulation. The only thing you're missing is CoQ10, literally, because the thing is carnitine's in there. So just talk about carnitine real quick. Carnitine is an amino acid. It comes from carne, right? But you can also find it in broccoli and some vegetables, right? But carnitine takes fat and stuffs it into your mitochondria as another way to make more energy.
Yeah.
So you need carnitine. And if you're not supplementing with it, then essentially your mitochondria is not thriving. So then I think about this in the plant-based world. I am plant-based, but I eat meat. And the sole reason I eat meat, and I eat the cleanest meat possible from regenerative agriculture, is because I need that carnitine. And I get that. Otherwise, I'm going to basically eat 20 pounds of broccoli to get it. Or I have to supplement with it. So then or you supplement. So then I tell vegans, you don't have to take any animal-based products. You can get them from a lot of plant-based, but you have to supplement. Like, think about this. If someone is not eating enough meat, they're not getting certain nutrients out of that meat product. For whatever moral reason, I cannot, in good conscience, tell my friend, a vegan, to start eating meat.
Of course.
So I say, you need to supplement with something else. You need to literally take carnitine in injection form. And if you do, you optimize. And then next thing you know, you're adding more energy to your body. It helps with metabolic function. And they can tell the difference after the IV. And so your alpha lipoic acid, your arginine, your carnitine.
Alpha lipoic acid is wonderful.
Your B vitamins, all those things that they're fueling your mitochondria, right? And of course, NAD is as well. So the only thing you're missing really is you're missing a CoQ10 and then resveratrol. Oh, I also put biotin in there. Side note, for the biohackers out there, a little known fact. So biotin, it should have its own day one day. It's coming. Biotin is incredible. Biotin is phenomenal. Biotin, actually, you would not survive without biotin. Most people think it's an issue with the thyroid. It's not. Biotin deficiency means it directly affects your DNA, because if you actually look at your chromosomes, when they cross in the middle with the helixes, there's something called histones. And histones is essentially a belt that wraps the chromosomes together. Well, that's what biotin does. It promotes histone and the formulation of DNA together. So if you don't have biotin, you know. So
and people just think biotin like, oh, it's good for skin and hair.
Yeah, like, no, it's your DNA, bro.
Those are just side effects, honestly.
Yes. Yeah, it's a great case to make. Again, like I always tell people that in my experience and study with red light therapy, another great booster of like adenosine triphosphate.
Yep.
And a side effect of red light is your hair thickens up.
Yep.
It's not the end all be all to cure hair loss. You see all those helmets of people wearing the red light lasers, but because it's building mitochondria, the body's like, oh, here's a little extra energy. Let me take some resources and a non-essential material, right? And start to grow my hair back a little bit.
Yep.
And it's cool to look at these downstream side effects. When we're talking about NAD, I think this is also a good one too, because you hear people talk about, I did NAD. And you'll hear people say, I did a 4-day cycle,
a
5-day cycle. I've heard this referenced a lot in addiction treatment centers. I actually have a friend that's running a type of lounge where they nebulize NAD for like 4 or 5 days straight. And they have incredible recovery rates from heroin. So why would somebody stack NAD for 5 days in a row?
So for the addiction protocol, you have to go higher doses on NAD. So this is where like the 700 milligrams, 800 milligram IVs come into play. Now, most of the IVs that people come in here and get, like you yourself, are getting about 100 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you know what it feels like to get 100 milligrams. You get 700. I mean, you're miserable. You're detoxifying the entire time, which means you're sitting there at a prolonged rate of probably 6 hours.
Wow.
Now, you're detoxifying the entire body because that's how much damage addiction has caused to your body. And there's a key and lock system that's going on. So in a key and lock system, you have dopamine receptors in the brain. And the reason dopamine is sought after with your phone and most likely chocolate and sugar is because those dopamine receptors, when activated, give you focus, motivation, pleasure, and reward, right? Sex, alcohol, heroin.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a key and lock system. If sex is in that dopamine receptor in the brain, all you want is sex. And you're going to search high and low to get it.
Everywhere.
If sugar's in there as the key and lock system and so forth, right?
Yes.
So the idea is that NAD can be a new key and replace the sugar.
Yeah.
Without you having this crazy withdrawals.
Bingo. Because you're actually just having the crazy withdrawals while you're getting the IV done. So the miserable part is you're detoxifying with usually, I think this is what the most protocols should include, is a liver detox IV with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the crazy thing is you have to remove those toxins out of the body. And so for addiction, when you have unneeded things that are not supposed to be there being the key into a key and lock system, it does not do the body good. You have dysfunction. Imagine your brain is just basically running off of sex, alcohol, and heroin. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't function that way. You're getting so much dopamine and serotonin all the time that your body's like, this is overload, right? Like, it's just crazy. And so to get the body to calm down, there is a lot of recovery that needs to be done. So NAD allows the body to basically put about 6 to 7 months of therapy with just removal of those detox pathways in the key, and to condense it into like maybe 4 or 5 days in a row. And if they do liver IVs with it, like maybe NAC or glutathione, they flush out all those toxins, which I think most of the protocol should include it. But when that happens, you flush your body out of all the things that were basically making you addicted in the first place. Now you're going to ask, well, does NAD stay in place and replace the addiction? Well, that's the beautiful thing about it. Your body was already designed for NAD. You're just getting more NAD, which means now if you have more NAD in the body, you're just going to have more ATP production. You have more energy.
Are there any downstream side effects? Like, there's some supplements that they say if you're going to supplement something, you're going to shut down your body's own ability to create that substance. Like, let's just do testosterone supplementation for an example. If you inject cypionate, you tend to shut down your body's own natural production of testosterone. So what happens when we're doing NAD, and how are we affecting our own production?
That's a great question. I would say right now, I would look at the measurement of what NAD production really looks like. So if you can measure NAD being produced in like blood work or urinalysis, then I would say you look at that panel and you can tell whether or not something is actually causing you to not produce as much NAD. So for example, in research, our theory would be that you would look at a urinalysis test. The first pathway off the top of my head would be the kynurenate pathway. So the kynurenate pathway is an organic acid test, and it looks at metabolites in the brain. And so metabolites are essentially byproducts that are coming from like pathways. So like a pathway means that you take B3 or even a beginning tryptophan. Tryptophan converts into vitamin B3, and then vitamin B3 converts several steps down the road into eventually NAD. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you're looking at that pathway, you can actually see at what point the pathway stops. So for example, if tryptophan only gets to vitamin B3, I can check and say, yeah, there's no NAD being produced down this kynurenate pathway at all. Inflammation is diverting it and stopping it. Or maybe there's an overproduction of this pathway. Then all of a sudden I can check the metabolites again and say, oh, wow, the runoff from the NAD pathway, the kynurenate, is through the roof. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's one way that you can see how it's affecting the body. And what I would say is right now, everybody's different, right? So one person might respond well with that treatment as opposed to someone else that might say, no, I over metabolized it, right? I over methylated something.
Yeah.
I under methylated something. And then it's really trial and error because some people just run on higher levels of this compared to someone else, right?
Yeah, I don't even know if you can overload on NAD because it's also water soluble, isn't it?
It's water soluble, so I could not imagine you even over toxify off of it.
Yeah, and so the thing about it is that like something like testosterone, right? That's not a water soluble, right? Like that.
No, it's an oil.
And so
and it's fat soluble. So that's
but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like with the case with that is that you can overload your body because you're not just going to pee it out. It's going to stay,
idea.
and so then your body is like, we don't need to make more. We have enough of it, even though it's not being used properly, but it's stored somewhere. As opposed to like NAD, if you're overdoing it, well, you're just peeing it out.
That's a good point.
That might be a waste of your money because you're peeing it out, but it's not from that sense of like you're not going to all of a sudden be like, well, we don't need to produce that anymore.
We're getting notes from the crew. We got anything important coming in?
This is for an IV. And what's crazy is I'm putting on my nurse practitioner hat again. This person is getting an IV. And what this is typically what happens in here. I feel like a waiter.
Yeah.
So what will happen is people come in here and they're like, so I want this, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, how do you want to feel? Because that's the easiest way to get to it. Well, I want to feel energized. Mm-hmm. I'm bloated, so I don't want to feel like that anymore. I'm like, okay. So I kind of have an idea about this conversation from yesterday, and this person's here today. So y'all keep chatting for a second. I'm writing down a couple of things, but in my mind, I'm writing like, let's say B vitamins. Okay, so go back to the adrenal thing.
My favorite vitamin is B5.
Hands down, if you want more NAD production, you could almost make the case you want more B5.
Yeah, B5 directly targets the adrenals.
And then that's your stress response, which means you don't overfire the production, more energy like cortisol and adrenaline and ATP burn all your sources up, right?
So phosphatidylcholine used to be something that we could give. They took it away. We can't no longer do it, but we had a birthday a long time ago, 3 years ago. And we did full bags of tons of phosphatidylcholine, B5 to kind of like lower your stress and like just kind of relax, glutathione just for the clarity, and then what else was there? Taurine just for like that. Taurine also helps me make bile, so just to break down processes and keep your body clean, and glutamine, and then there was one more thing that was also in there in high doses of it, and it was like an MDMA trip.
Wow.
Oh yeah, that was legit. Okay, so it's like Tommy Boy the movie. I'm like driving with Baldo and I look over like, dude, I'm rolling. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that shot? Dude, my brain's going like 10 miles a minute.
Well, because phosphatidylcholine helps you synapse. And so if you're doing it at that rate, you're just like, whoa, I'm tripping, dude. Like, and it was like great, clean.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
It's interesting to hear some of the compounds and supplements mentioned in wellness and optimization, because as somebody who went through biotoxin illness with Lyme and mold, phosphatidylcholine in high doses is something they'll give orally to rebuild the integrity of the cell wall.
Makes sense.
Which has been damaged a lot of time by biotoxin illness and especially molds in the blood, which are so prevalent in Texas and Austin.
So they gave you phosphatidylcholine. So what's interesting is if you break that in half and you take the choline part, the choline is what causes the synapses. But anything that goes to the brain, it goes to the liver. So choline is one of the biggest components of the liver. In fact, you can make the case that choline deficiency is one of the major causes of cancer.
Yeah.
And so not only do they restore your choline levels, but the phosphatidyl part is actually the fat part that actually goes into the lipid membranes of the cell, and they make them healthy again so they can receive the synapses between the brains. And so when we were giving that, we were trying to create a nootropic. And so...
it was wonderful. They took it away and we ran out of it at PaleoFX. Everyone was getting it, coming back, dude, I want that shot. I want that. We call it brain candy. And it was like, people were just like lit. Like,
natural Adderall. It's natural Adderall. That's
like,
what it is.
But like good lit. Right. And
let's talk about that. We've mentioned that a couple times. We've mentioned N-Acetyl Cysteine. We mentioned NAC. We mentioned phosphatidylcholine.
Yeah.
Without getting pointed, why do certain nutritional supplements, foods, we could argue, why are they pulled off the menu to give in IVs? What's the deal?
Because they're more effective. And I think the research looks at it as you can treat it as a medication. So the second a vitamin becomes an injectable, it's a medical service now, and guess what? It's a medication. So when you give vitamin C as a medication, the WHO lists it as an essential way to do it is through IVs. Okay, so here's the thing. My theory with the phosphatidylcholine was it was too effective. Because essentially, if you're causing synapses in the brain and you're causing, this thing to work, from this perspective, I think the off-label use was what we were using it for, like to cause synapses in the brain, because phosphatidylcholine is actually given to reduce fat. Mm-hmm. They inject it in people's double chin to basically burn fat and shrink their fat. So it's a cosmetic procedure. Wow. So it literally breaks up fat. And it's incredible about this. When we get fat burner shots here for weight loss, what's in there? Choline. And so I'm like, wow, like we're looking about this all wrong. Like, how do you lose weight?
It's allowed to already be mixed in
it's the most bioactive form,
like mix.
The most extracted, purest form you could ever imagine in injectable form. Yeah. So if you're getting exactly what your body was designed for, you basically bypass all those steps that you have to go through to get NAD, to get the phosphatidylcholine. Like, you just get exactly what you need. And that's the best form of supplementation. So that means it works like that. I mean, I'm talking like if we're in the line of instant gratification, I think it's detrimental to our business if they leave here and an hour later, they don't feel better, because they're going to say, I spent X amount of this and blah, 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 and I didn't feel a thing. That was the case when we heard at other places. I went to that IV place and I didn't like this, or, I didn't feel anything. And I'm just like, bullshit. You come to us, you're going to feel something, because we want to make sure that you're giving what you need. And what happens is if it works quickly right away and you make people feel better, now you have their attention, which means like, who would love this? My husband, my wife, my mom, my brother. And because what will happen is this is what will happen. Go back to the business deal. Someone comes in and we used to think we got to explain all these vitamins to everyone, why it's so great for them. Most people didn't care. They really did not care. They glutathione, whatever, NAD. They know NAD.
They want to know that
NAD.
we can.
They know we can, but they love NAD because it gives them energy.
Yeah.
It makes them live longer. That's why they want it. Everything else they can't even pronounce. They just think B12's and everything, right?
Yeah.
So then I say, okay, well, what if you had a bunch of people who came in and were coming in just because they felt like this is part of their essential form of taking care of themselves? They're not going to care what you stick in the bag. They just know and they trust you that you're taking care of them. So then what happens is that after a while, we say, we got this all wrong. People just want to know they can go to a place and they know they're just going to get healthier. Mm-hmm. So that's what we tell people. The IVs are so effective that every time you come and get one, you're going to get healthier immediately after that.
And you can do it with shots too. I mean, like NAD shots, you feel that like quick.
Like you're just like shots.
Rush. And is that intramuscular?
That's intramuscular. You can do it subcutaneous or intramuscular.
So like I do 10-mile runs, right? And I love doing a NAD shot before a 10-mile. Like NAD, CoQ10, carnitine, and what's my third one that
B12, arginine.
I think it's B5 that I put in there as well too. Yeah. In my shot. And typically if I do a 10-mile run around 6 miles, I start to like taper down. Like I start to like slow down. Like I'm having to struggle a little bit more. When I do a shot before, like 30 minutes before I do a run, dude, 6 miles, I'm just starting. Yep. And then I'm going harder, and then I'll go 12 miles or 13 miles. And it's not like I felt different. It's just I didn't get tired. Like I just kept going and going and going. So it's not like, oh my God, I'm gonna go do this. No, it's not like that. It's just more like, fuck yeah, I'm still cruising. Yeah. And so that's the difference, right? So how do you explain that to someone? And it's like you just have to experience that, right? And it's like because if you do those things, then like when you start to like, and then the other thing is that night I'll sleep even better.
Well, I was gonna say, I can go back to that. So the NAD for people who measure their HRV. Mm-hmm. Their HRV increases after a NAD IV or a NAD injection. Injections are great too. Don't get me wrong. Like we did injections all the time before because we had to test on everything. Like every formulation we created, I was like, hey, come here, Baldo. I got to give you this shot or something. I want to see, like, and then I would do it to myself. But NAD always.
Well, there's been plenty of times where like, dude, what if we tried this and this? Like, I don't know, let's try it. And then it's like, that works.
but the HRV increases with NAD because of recovery. So imagine that's another benefit that you can see in objective data that someone comes in and says, how do I know it's helping me? CJ. So CJ, one of our business partners, Baldo gets about 400 milligrams of NAD in their IVs. I get about 300. Well, CJ just has been starting out and he's been getting about 200, maybe 100 sometimes.
At that point, he was getting 100.
He was getting 100. We gave him a 400 milligram dose by accident. He's sitting there working because that's what most people do. They work while they get their IVs. And he like puts his pencil down or his pen down. He's like, dude, I can't concentrate. God bless. Like, what is going on? And I'm like, are you okay? He's like, I don't feel good. Like, I can't concentrate. And I was thinking like, oh, crap.
Because at this point, I'm also complaining. Dude, I don't feel anything.
I don't feel anything. And I'm like, oh, crap. I switched y'all's bags. Now, granted, this doesn't normally happen at all, right? Don't get me wrong. This never happens, actually. This is for some reason, thankfully, it was just them that happened it to. Because CJ's like...
It's because we were sharing a pole and we were working right next to each other.
Yeah, so but anyway, and I was in a rush. But anyway, so He's there for like 2 hours, right? Like he stands up for 2 hours. He says, I cannot sit down. And when I slow it down, then it's going to take forever. I need to get this over with. So he stands up, he's sweating. Like he's like, oh my God, guys, am I okay? Like what the, and I'm like, dude, you're fine. As soon as the IV stops, you're going to stop this too. And you're going to be fine. He's freaking out. He finally calms down, gets done with. The next day he sends us his Whoop app info. HRV's at 112.
Yeah. And when it's torpedoing 90.
It's 90, maybe even 70.
No, it's 122.
Yeah. So it was not that high ever. It's never been this high. Never, ever been this high. He goes, I want to do it again.
His rest numbers were higher. His recovery numbers were higher.
His sleep was better. Like everything was better. His strain was down. Like he goes, I want to do it, Bailey, so off the data. Not the fact that I felt horrible going through it, but the fact that
it was also a big jump. Going from 100 to 400 milligrams is a big jump.
But see, when people come in here, they're like, well, I heard so-and-so do it on a podcast. And I'm just like, look, here's the thing. Have you ever done NAD before? And like, no. PaleoFX, prime example. People are like, well, I want to do like 1,000 milligrams because I heard Greenfield doing it. I'm like, Greenfield's crazy. And I'm not letting you do this here and pass it down in front of all of us while people walk by. You're going to start off with this and tell me how you feel afterwards, and then I'll let you come back. Yeah. And there's plenty of times people are like, I'm glad you did that, because if you've ever had NAD, it's like this. During the pandemic, we had people bring dates here because the bars were shut down and the restaurant, where were we supposed to take a date? We were open. So they would talk about NAD IVs and say we could sit here for an hour and get to know each other and talk. And so first or second dates were brought here. And the way it was described, I'm like, someone's like, hey, I'm bringing this date here tomorrow. Okay. You're literally bringing a date. You're having a date here. Yeah. Okay. So what do you want from us? Well, like, she'll be okay with the NAD, right? Because that's all I've been talking to her about. He's like, I'm bringing her for a NAD IV. I said, no shit, your first date, you're bringing her for a NAD IV? That's romantic. I was like, that's so cool, dude. I was like, and so literally, she comes in, and she's like, so-and-so told me all about this, blah, blah, blah. It's really cool. And so we walk her through, and she's like, I'm feeling like, yeah, like I can totally find my
And the music's going on. And
like
people are hanging out.
They have a great time.
Yeah.
Guess what happens? She winds up being a long-term client and a good friend. She brings in other people. She's the one that got us the native deal.
And it happened like 3 different times.
It happened 3 or 4 times. And so every time they come in, like people are like, yeah, this is their first time with NAD. And our lounge is very open. So people who come in here the first time, I'll be like, hey, do you want NAD or what? Like, what's that? People are sitting down getting IV like, you want it. What does it do? Like,
that's what you want.
You want it. You just trust me. You just want it. We'll explain it. Yeah, it hurt a little bit, but like you'll be amazed afterwards how great you feel. Well, what do you mean it's going to hurt a little bit? You know, this is what will happen. People would literally get sick to their stomach with NAD right then and there just because it's detoxing their bodies right there.
Sure.
But during my IV, I feel like I'm about to run through a wall. Like I am like energized. I am like, dude, I feel this weird like numbing sensation that goes through my body, right? And I'm like, dude, I feel charged. And that's, and I'll get done. I'll usually go for a run or go do something, but everyone uses it to a different extent. We've had NAD patches that people have used. Yeah. The intranasal NAD I've seen mixed with oxytocin. Mm-hmm. That's why I say biohackers blow me away, because you never know. I would have loved just to see all the NAD products there. I would have tried the gum. I would have tried some creams, maybe the shampoo with it in there. Right?
Yeah, I'll bring some gum the next time I come. I got a couple packs. You know, it was fascinating. The technology, the supplements, what people are doing there. And I think what was interesting for me is one thing that I missed was, you know, when you buy like a $10,000 machine, you have it in your home, or you have an infrared sauna or the ice bath by yourself, it sort of sucks. Like it's just not. It's
we were
not
talking about this yesterday.
Yeah, it's not. Is there's an essence of healing that happens in community.
Yep.
So I would always argue, you know, I see at home vitamin IV, you know, infusions that the nurse can come to your home.
Yeah.
It's so fun to come and like, I'm trying to think of the dude that I was talking to the other day with the kind of, he's really tan. He had like red hair.
Walter.
Yes. Walter.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not here for an IV. I'm here to hang.
He comes and hangs.
He comes every week. He'll be here today. So here's what's crazy about this. So we gave more hugs in the past 2 years than we ever have in our life. I guarantee you that, right? We try to get 12 hugs a day sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is incredible because hugs actually boost your immune system. It's science.
Yeah.
But here's the other crazy thing. In about, what time is it right now? It's almost like, I think if it's around noon, get this.
No, it's not.
Okay. So at 12:30 today, we're going to have a lunch and learn. We have it every Friday. All right. And this Friday, usually the speaker talks about something. I'm going to talk for probably maybe up to 2 hours today.
Yeah.
Okay. About NAC, NAC. We have the dry erase board. I go and I do some drawings. We record it. We stream it live. Walter will show up in the crowd. There'll be a regular crowd. That whole room will be filled with people sitting there eating free, healthy food.
You were here last Friday, right?
2 Fridays ago.
2 Fridays ago. And then people will be getting IVs while they're sitting down eating, hearing us talk. We have guest speakers. Like I think you were here for probably Mayo's, right? I think is what it was. You'll give a talk one day. And what's credible is that the community, the electricity, the energy you feel in the room. We did this before the pandemic, and that energy is back. It's that same, it never left, because when you walk in, people are smiling, they see each other, they bring a friend, a loved one, they're hugging, they're networking, like, because you never know who's going to walk in. So, hey, I brought so-and-so, I brought my mom today, they're visiting from out of town, they're coming down. I mean, literally, you never know who's going to walk in. And people will drive clear across town to come here. Like, I haven't missed it, right? Or they'll show up late. And then they hang out for like 2 hours afterwards. And it looks like a straight up bar in there of just people. And you saw it walking around, getting IVs, little like 3 groups of 4 or 5 people, meeting new people. And the thing is, people say, I don't want to leave. Or like, it's like a vortex in here. Like you just get sucked in. And like, I'm like, yeah, that energy, like the vibe, like you can feel the energy when you walk in. And so to us, like we live it every day.
Yeah. So, and last December, we created a festival out of it for a whole month.
Just to get people together. Because what we realized during the pandemic, we were proud to say we got a 30-day festival together where we had face-to-face people hugging, laughing, getting IVs together, eating healthy food. No one got sick from the festival. I'm telling you right now, there was no reports of anyone getting sick afterwards. And if anything, got healthier because of that. Because guess what? During the festival, there was people's first time out in public. There was a lot of people who were there that I remember talking to several of them. They're like, I haven't been around this many people in a while, and it's making me anxious.
It does. The first time you're out and around people and nobody has a mask on, and you've been hearing all the ways you could die for a long, long time. Right. So to be in close relation, it's definitely, it can be an intense experience that first time.
Right. But here's the thing. There's something about adding to your health when you know that someone is genuinely there to give you and hold space, right? And I know that term is thrown around a lot, but let's think about it. We hold space here for people. Even if Walter wants to just come and hang out, he comes and hangs out. And I'll tell you this right now, he says incredible things. The conversations that have been had in this room in the past 5 years will blow your mind. We've talked spirituality. We've talked quantum physics, metaphysics. We've talked psychedelics. We've talked regenerative agriculture. We've talked capital consciousness. We've talked about satellite drones. We talked about blockchain.
And we talk about poop the most. Poop is our most common subject for sure.
But it's engaging the idea that we don't do Zoom calls. We don't like doing them. We want face-to-face meetings. We want people in our face saying, I'm breathing all over you. I'm hugging. You're getting my germs all over my couch. And the thing is, I love it. I love it all. Because
that's what community is, right?
That's what community is. It's immunity. Community is immunity. If you think about this, your microbiome that's found in your gut is actually all the germs from the soil that you eat outside your house. Farm to table food has microbiomes in that dirt that the food is growing in that has bacteria, viruses, parasite, and fungus that when you eat that food, it's supposed to go into your digestive tract and make up what's called your microbiome, the communicational system to your brain, which is found in your digestive tract. And if you never eat farm to table food, seasonally rotated, then all of a sudden, what does your digestive tract and your immune system look like? So most people eat Uber Eats or Favor or whatever packaged foods. It takes 30 steps to get that food into a packaged ingredient onto your plate. The food we're serving at lunch today, it takes 3 steps to get it from the farm into your plate. 3 steps. And you talk about losing the purity, the microbiome out of that. We don't want to lose that. We want that in there. Right? Like the chicken eggs, right? It looks like the chicken just pooped it out because it did. That's what you want. And guess what? That egg, never refrigerated. It sits there. And guess what the egg is? The most beautiful, nutritious food on the planet, including the egg yolk. Why? Because it's full of choline and it's full of selenium and zinc and it's full of things that help your brain. It's the fat your brain's made out of. And so what's crazy is Walter, he only eats chicken eggs for his animal products.
Oh, wow.
Because he says, I don't mind that byproduct.
Yeah.
And I said, that's fascinating. And guess what I learned? Chickens are like the healthiest animal to have in your backyard because they eat bugs and it's the best fertilizer. And
they're incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow. So when we talk about
has Mary come around?
Oh, yeah. We're getting a chicken coop.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm finally getting a chicken coop now. I'm so excited, dude.
I love it.
So, yeah. So I'm trying to get an ecosystem in our backyard. In the past 2 years, I realized that people are so reliant on systems that I don't want to be relying on that same system. I want to make my own food. I want to never have to go to the grocery store again. So then the garden in the backyard is looking great. even an aquaponics garden with the fish in the backyard that are growing it naturally. So we don't have to ever have to grow in soil.
Incredible.
And that's what I'm saying is like, if you have that approach, imagine that's health. Because in the past 2 years, if people stayed at home watching TV, I didn't. I went outside and tended on the garden, sunlight, barefoot, peaceful. I felt so connected with the earth. I would look up at the stars and I'm like, I'm nothing. All my problems are nothing. Like we're a small galaxy inside millions of other galaxies. And it'd be crazy to think there's not intelligent life other places. But the crazy thing is with Elon and these other cats that want to live on Mars, I want to keep living on Earth. I think Earth's incredible. I think Earth's amazing. And guess what? Our frequency with Earth is the same as ours.
Yeah.
We have the same frequency. We share our universe. Our Earth is what we create inside of us.
There's a great sign, a great billboard downtown Austin that says, "Look at the stars, save billions." Like there's so much here on this planet we yet to explore. And like, we haven't even explored the oceans.
Yeah.
The vast sea of energy that's giving life to the planet. It's really incredible. I want to be respectful of your guys' time and our time window. And I just want to ask a couple more questions.
Of course.
It's the Beautifully Broken podcast. So it's really, it's taking the times that we fall down in life and the times when we're seemingly broken apart and putting it back together. John, what does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
Pain is love. I appreciate the pain. I appreciate the journey. I appreciate all the experiences that I've ever had because it led me to here. I don't look at failures as anything more than just lessons learned. And I believe that all of us are going through the same issues. We are not broken and no one is ever broken, truly. The idea is that if you look at, for example, what you can possibly create, just look at Van Gogh. During his blue period, he created some of the most beautiful artwork the world has ever seen. And that means that you can sit at home and create the same type of masterpiece. And you can choose to do it or not. The broken aspect is whether you're going to follow through with your actions or not. So truly being beautifully broken is the idea that you take that and you utilize it to help others not go through the same path that you did. That's
Beautiful.
What it means.
Baldo?
I've always enjoyed that quote, "We are all broken. That's how the light gets in."
Yeah.
And it's true, right? Like there's always something else. There's always more room to continue to grow. And I just love it. I mean, our whole business is because we were broken.
Yeah, that's really what it was.
The idea was that he had a breakdown,
nervous breakdown,
working in pain care. And there was this idea that like, I know how to help people, but I just even can't. And sure, like he could have not waited until he was having this breakdown for us to start this other business, but would we have done it if that didn't happen? And in my case, I was like in a point of like, I was selling Cutco, but like, I never found a purpose with it. Like it was other than like I made a lot of money and like I would like work my ass off for like, let's say 3 months and then like just take off and travel the world. And, it would get to the point where like, well, fuck, I only have $1,000 left. How can I stretch this $1,000? I don't want to go back. And I would be out of savings, be out of money. And because I always had the confidence of like, well, I'll just go back and make more money and I would do it again. There's plenty of things that people can find purpose in selling Cutco and all that stuff. And there's people that have created foundations out of like, I'm doing Cutco so I can support my foundation. I just never had that. Like I want to I want my purpose to be also the same thing that I'm doing, not to use something else as a means to that. It's easier for me.
Yes.
Right. And so I was just going through that phase. He was going through that. I was kind of like also,
lost, man.
I was lost. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, there's no purpose. Like I got my car stolen. Like I was just going, like I had gone through a breakup. Like it was just so much.
You were like 60 pounds heavier?
He's 60 pounds heavier.
Wow.
And unhealthy and and he was having a breakdown and I was like, well, dude, we can figure it out. Like, and for me, it's always been like, well, I love when there is something that's a little broken because then I get to figure out
how to fix it,
how to patch it up and make it better. Because it only gets stronger after that, right? So
beautiful. Well, you guys are providing an incredible service to the city of Austin.
Thank you.
And it's definitely tangible. And I've heard you mention so many times before I found my way here, out of need, out of crisis. And I'm so thankful for what you guys are doing. Again, it's such a unique situation in the world. John, I'll give you a magic wand. And the divisive nature of the world right now, we find ourselves like really pulling away from each other.
Yeah.
And I listen to people how there's almost like this ego death because they know they're not going to convince the person across the table of their belief system and vice versa. What would you do if you could offer someone either a skill or a tool to better navigate the way the world is engaging right now?
Psilocybin or LSD?
Yeah. Done.
Yeah.
And if you need help with it, we can talk you through it.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty profound, but it's not untrue, right? The idea is that if anything, it breaks down a lot of barriers. Those two things do, right? Like that.
Yeah, but
like,
yours, what would you do?
What would I do? Yeah. Repeat the question again.
If you could sit down with, essentially you're going to get a megaphone to talk to the people and just the divisive nature of the way we're engaging with each other. It's like, it's so black and white and polarized. Yeah. If you could offer someone advice or a tool to better navigate this human experience right now and create togetherness, what would you tell people?
I mean, I wouldn't even go as far as like, yeah, I think that definitely works, but I don't know. Like for me, it's just, it's always been, so talking about LSD and stuff, I just did a little weekend trip with some friends and we were trying to like build more community and just get out of there, like in a sense of like more togetherness because that helps. And I went in with the intention of, my intention was, okay, I want to make sure that I come out of this with like, what's the one thing that I could do to, just to like overall help me be more effective and just be more practice with more love in our community. Like what's the one thing? And I've done these journeys and I come back with like tons of notes, pages and pages of notes where I'm just writing and then I go back. I'm like, dude, that's crazy that I wrote all that. Well, this one was one phrase. I just wrote down one phrase out of that whole 4-day weekend. And it was, we spent so much time trying to find solutions to problems that don't even exist. And it was really impactful for me because I find myself that I'm doing stuff and I'm just like stressing out about it. And I'm just like, wait, give me a second. Is this even a problem? Like, why am I working on this? And so many times I find myself like, no, it's not. Like, it's not even. And so I look at today and so many times we're like, but I have all these issues and there's all these problems. It's like, well, it's not really a problem. Like, if you're healthy, it's not a problem, right? Like this situation today. But it's like, it's also not a problem if you find yourself in a nice community and you're just trying to be open to what people are trying to say because there's already a solution. Like for every problem, there's already a solution or else there wouldn't be a problem anyways. You might not be open to it or it hasn't come to you, but like if you are cool with it and you're just having a community, it goes back to community, it just basically solves on its own. The solution's always there. So for me, that tool would be like, find your community, engage with it, love your community, give more hugs, and just fucking smile.
Yeah, find your tribe.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's so funny. I interviewed Robbie Bent yesterday. Robbie has a huge venture capital fund in Canada. It's dedicated to doing research around psychedelic medicine. Today on the New York Times, or I think it was New York, I'm trying to think of the New York publication, it's just these pictures of all these dried mushrooms.
Yep.
And it's like psilocybin, the next frontier of mental health.
Yep.
And so we're looking at this and the conversation's coming up again and again. I think like anything, I always want people to be responsible with the power of medicine, of that medicine. Yep. I've definitely had times in my life where I did not respect the power.
Yep.
And it was like, oh shit,
yeah.
And you're brought to your knees. But it's been an incredible tool. I would totally agree. I think there's a lot of dream scenarios in which everybody gets a little microdose and we all have to sit for 20 minutes and breathe. Yep. And then we do ice bath and then we get an NADIV. I was sharing with a person yesterday. It's like, I had a friend over for dinner and we just put on music and we just started to dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just started to dance. We danced for like a half hour.
Yeah.
Half hour. We didn't say anything.
Yeah.
We just kept changing the song.
Yeah.
Waltzing, salsa, techno, and I was like, we were so high by the end.
Yeah.
And we just looked at each other, was like, this would stop all wars.
Yeah, yes, correct. Yes.
Yes, it would.
It would stop all wars if people just knew how to do this and be and practice all the natural ways we have to engage with other human beings in a state of pure joy.
I agree completely. I'll leave you with this. Walter, our good friend Walter. Yeah. We were talking about this stuff. You want to go on a magic carpet ride right now? I was like, a magic carpet ride? He's like, yeah, let's go right now. He goes, close your eyes. And he took me through this whole journey of like winding around and flying on this carpet. I was going around a castle, like he described it in great detail. I was just sitting there in the lounge. It took about 2 minutes and he says, okay, wake up. And I woke up and I was like, that was so real. That was so cool. He goes, there, you can use that anytime you want. And I was like, damn, that's badass.
Yeah,
Like, there
it
you
was
go.
like a nice little trip.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Like whenever these substances come into your life, like people talk about all the time, like it's like, oh, I did this weekend and this other weekend. I've done this, like I've done ayahuasca like 35 times. And I'm like, it's supposed to be a tool to just help you like get there. Like you can always get there, but it's almost like, it's almost like,
it's just a lube.
it's a little lube to help you get there. So you can, oh, that's how that feels so that I can get there. It's almost like that idea of like whenever you meditate or like manifestation and you talk about like try to feel that emotion you're going to feel whenever you're there, try to feel that now, right? So well, when you're using a psychedelic as a tool, like you can get there and it's like, how do I do that? Like I don't even know how what's going to feel. So maybe that helps you break a barrier to then be like, oh, okay, now I can sit on a daily basis and practice that, but I don't need the drug, I don't need the chemical, I don't need the medicine
100%.
all the time.
because you just brought it out yourself by that dancing.
And then on the flip side, you could also do the substances to just dance. You know, sometimes people go and do them because like, I need all this thing to break. It's like, you don't need anything. Like they're just tools. Just as this is a tool, right? Like you shouldn't have to come in for an IV every single day. Could you do it once a week? Yeah, great. That'd be awesome. If you could. Once a month is great, right? But like you shouldn't have to need any of that.
Yeah. Incredible, guys. What a kick-ass hour and a half of
2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours. Yeah.
Well, it's my longest podcast.
Yeah.
But just high level, and I'm late for a meeting, but it's all good.
There was so many good nuggets in that, dude. I love that. That was a great one.
That was fantastic.
It was awesome, guys. So we'll do it again. We could go into so many of we could offshoot into the individual topics, but I'm excited to see what you guys bring to the city of Austin. I'm glad I'm here for the ride.
You're part of it now.
And I am part of it.
Yeah.
I am part of it.
Yeah.
And thanks for being on the Beautifully Broken podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Does anybody think that these health upgrades sound expensive? They can be an investment, but after truly learning how money works, the inflationary nature of our fiat currency, combined with the fact that big banks charged, are you ready for this? $34 billion to the poorest members of society, I knew I was ready for a shift. In my opinion, money is energy, and I've seen too many scenarios which compromised health is attached to financial distress. The energy is not flowing. And to break that cycle, it's going to take a new level of thinking to come up with a different result. Enter Celsius Network. This is my bank that's not a bank. Celsius is a place to store cryptocurrency safely and get an incredible return on your stored wealth. They share up to 80% of the revenue with the users, not the board of trustees, so you can earn up to 17.78% APY distributed weekly. I'd like to see a bank beat that. So what does that look like? Every Monday, I get a direct deposit of the money I've earned as a reward for joining the community on my beautifully designed app with this high-end customer interface. I've made over $2,600 by joining Celsius in just over 9 months. I've never made that in the history of time through my old, air quote, big bank. So they have 0% in withdrawal fees, over 500,000 users and $10 billion in assets that are insured. And you can also use your crypto or borrow dollars or stable coins with loans starting at just 1%. That's correct. You can borrow from yourself and keep your own money and pay it back over the next 6 months to a year. Say it with me. Financial freedom is back on the market. So check out the link in the show notes to join Celsius. I've got a special offer to earn $30 in stablecoins by joining the community. Please don't take this as financial advice, and everything I offer is an opportunity to do your own research and make the best choice for your abundance. Let the green energy flow so you can do more good in the world. My friends, you made it to the end of the podcast, and here we are in season 3. I think our relationship is developing into something really special. So there are 2 ways to support this show. The first is by joining my membership program at buymeacoffee.com/FreddySetGo. Here you'll get early access to all the podcasts, bonus episodes, video clips, discounted coaching, and free webinars with thought leaders in the wellness and transformational technology industry. It's a chance to take your listening experience and put it into action. The second way is to support the podcast through freddysetgo.com and download the Beautifully Broken Buyer's Guide. This is my new ebook, which is a collection of transformational technology, supplements, and courses that have worked for me, my clients, and my family. These are things that I've found to be incredibly helpful in my healing journey, and I put them all in one book. Most of them offer significant discounts just by clicking the link or using the discount code. And please know they don't cost you anything extra. And at the same time, they support the podcast through affiliations. My heart thanks you for tuning in. I'm so glad you're here with us. If you've enjoyed today's show, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. And if you want to connect with me directly, I'm on Instagram at freddysetgo or buymeacoffee.com/freddysetgo. Last message from my vast team of lawyers that I pay a lot of money for. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only. By listening, you agree not to use the information found here as medical advice to treat any medical condition in yourself, your family members, or others. Always consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having challenges with. That's it for today. Our closing: the world is changing. We need you at your very best. So take the steps today to always be upgrading. Remember, while life is pain, putting the fractured pieces back together is a beautiful process. I love you. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel. Namaste.